Chapter 458. After breaking through the 4 seasons samsara, Chi Nyu's divine sense phantom appeared beside 2 terrifying great rivers. They raced over from afar, so great that it was impossible to see where they ended. These 2 great rivers were black and one was white. Looking down, one could see fierce monster beasts leaping out from the pure white and pitch-black waters. Their eyes were filled with cruelty as they looked at Chi Nyu. But at this time, the 2 great rivers that flowed parallel to each other seemed to be forcefully bent by an invisible force, causing the black and white rivers to converge. The pure white and pitch-black waters collided together, but didn't fuse at all. It was as if they were naturally repelling each other, as if they were incompatible with each other. As the 2 river waters touched each other, perhaps because of the mutual attraction of their auras, they gradually formed vortexes that swallowed more and more river water. With loud rumbling sounds, the vortexes gradually formed 2 incomparably massive grinding discs. They spun in sync. A terrifying tearing strength opened up a crack between the 2 grinding discs. The edges of this crack were black and white, but it was unknown where it led to. Chi Nyu's eyes flashed, and a dignified look appeared in his eyes. Yin-yang energies, black and white grinding discs, in order to help Chutai to win. You don't even want the most basic form of face. He was silent for several breaths of time. Then a mocking smile appeared on his face. What a pity. Even if you discard face, how can a mere mirage king bead trap me? Stepping forwards, Chi Nyu's divine sense phantom stepped into the crack without hesitation. On the blue stone platform, the Mirage King bead trembled. A halo of light shot out, covering Chi Nyu within. Then a black and white sphere appeared. Although there was no sound as it revolved, all the cultivators that saw it felt their hearts tremble. They couldn't suppress their fear, and their bodies stiffened as if they were cast from iron. Yin-yang energies, black and white grinding discs. A cultivator screamed out, incomparably shocked. After a brief moment of silence, the entire 4 Seasons city's great square began to boil over. Spring, summer, autumn, and winter had the samsara of the 4 Seasons, and now yin-yang energies, black and white grinding discs had appeared. The probability of these 2 appearing on their own was 1 in 10,000, but the probability of them appearing together was so low that it was negligible. However, something that should have been impossible had actually happened today. Even a fool would not believe that there was nothing fishy about it. Countless eyes fell on Tao Yuan's icy face. Many of the Grandmaster's initial supporters had complex looks in their eyes. Although they knew that Tao Yuan was filled with hatred towards Chi Nyu, and they also guessed that he would stand on Chutai's side, they never imagined that Tao Yuan would disregard face at all and brazenly interfere in this matter. This was too much. Kong Mingqiao was so angry that he began to laugh. Grandmaster Tao Yuan, your Mirage King bead is truly extraordinary. This has truly broadened my horizons today. Tao Yuan was expressionless as he coldly said, It's just a coincidence. Like before, even if this old man wanted to, I wouldn't be able to interfere with the Mirage King Pearl. Many years ago, I raised a dog. This dog loves to eat kingfishers, but it can't catch them by itself, so it can only beg me to help it. Because Madam likes it very much, that dog of mine can eat it very happily every day. But afterwards, this dog died because its luck was bad and it ate a poisonous kingfisher. I told Madam about this, but Madam didn't believe me at all. She asked me, how can a dog catch a kingfisher? Tao Yuan's face twitched. Kong Mingqiao, don't be too insolent. Even if you are the master of a Dao arena, you still don't have the qualifications to humiliate me. After Kong Mingqiao vented his anger, he actually calmed down. He shook his robes and sat down. I was only telling a story about a dead dog, so why is Grandmaster Tao Yuan so angry? But once the second round ends, I will carefully examine this Mirage King bead and see just what is so strange about it that it can cause Chi Nyu's luck to be so bad. Tao Yuan sneered. If Arena's Steward Kong wins the bet, then I will offer the Mirage King bead to you with both hands. Arena's steward Kong can examine it however you want, but I refuse now. The Four Seasons City, Lord suddenly said, that's enough. You two shouldn't argue any further. Today, the entire city is paying attention, so don't lose your status. His eyes flashed and he smiled. I am actually quite confident in little friend Chinyu. Since he can break through the samsara of the Four Seasons, it isn't impossible for him to break through the black-white grinding pans. Kong Mingqiao didn't speak again. His eyes were filled with worry, but also a bit of anticipation. Chinyu, I hope that you can smoothly win. Perhaps today's exchange of pointers isn't fair to you, but there is no true fairness in this world. If you want to rise up from your humble beginnings and become a figure that illuminates the world, then you must experience all sorts of tempering. Today is one of those tempering methods. Break through it, and perhaps you will obtain some unexpected harvests. Kong Mingqiao looked up in the direction of the Dao Arena. As the master of Four Seasons City's Dao Arena, his spirit and will had long since fused together with the Dao Arena. He could clearly feel that boundless divine sense that had crossed an endless distance to arrive. Master, you really are paying attention to Chinyu. Since you value him, why do you ignore him and allow him to experience these storms alone? Are you testing him? Above the Dao Arena, a phantom looked up towards the city square. His incomparably handsome face was enough to cause 99% of women in the world to want to strangle him to death. Solitary Westgate's lips curled up in a smile, not bothering to conceal his disdain. His eyes were cold to the extreme. So many years have passed, and the immortal sex methods are still so disgusting. If I say I'm dissatisfied with that brat Chinyu, the immortal sect, the truth is that I really am dissatisfied. What a pity I don't have full confidence in myself. Otherwise I would have already torn apart their mountain gate. His eyes were penetrating, as if he could pierce through all obstacles in the world. Distance wasn't a problem for him. His eyes accurately fell on the Mirage King bead. After quietly looking at it for a moment, his eyes brightened and he smiled. It really is amazing. I never thought that the purple moon in Chinyu's soul space would have such a mystical ability. Even though the immortal sect has done everything they can, I fear they will still lose everything today. Solitary Westgate smiled in satisfaction. This was because the more lively Chinyu was, the more it proved that his calculations in the past were correct. There was still a chance that Yunyang and Ning would survive. This had already become his life's greatest obsession. Only after he understood this would he have the chance to knock on the threshold of that final step and become a true transcendent existence. Thus, whether it was because he couldn't bear to part with Chinyu or because he needed to cultivate the great Tao, he wanted Chinyu to live on until his needs were satisfied. It was just that if some people tried to challenge the rules he set down, then they couldn't blame him for bullying the weak and personally attacking them. A cold light flashed in Solitary Westgate's eyes. He looked not too far away from the blue stone platform where the three witnesses were. They were covered by the gaze of one of the strongest powerhouses in the world, and the rules of the world in this area had already changed. But what was horrifying was that no one noticed this at all. They didn't know that their life or death depended on someone else's thoughts. Chu Taidu opened his eyes, revealing a bit of weariness. Then, with a spatial fluctuation, a spirit plant appeared beside him. The Mirage King bead truly lived up to its reputation. His divine sense had been severely damaged before he was able to break through the autumn trial and find the third spirit plant. Humph! The soul was the most important thing for a cultivator, and it was also the most difficult to cultivate. He had bitterly cultivated for countless years in order to obtain his current achievements. Even if Chinyu had a great lucky chance, it was impossible for him to compete with him in the path of the soul. When he broke through the spring and summer trials, Chinyu hadn't moved at all. He must have been trapped in an illusion by the power of the Mirage King bead. Now that he, Chu Taidu, had broken through the third trial, these people would inevitably put away their contemptuous gazes and look at him with awe and worship. But at this time, The cries of alarm he imagined didn't appear. Chu Taidu's heart skipped a beat, and a foreboding premonition rose in his heart. He couldn't bother with maintaining the demeanor of a great expert anymore, and quickly looked up. In the next moment, Chu Taidu froze where he was. He looked at the 4 spirit plants quietly floating beside Qinyu. His mouth opened so wide that one could stuff a crocodile leg in. His mind was in chaos. With loud rumbling sounds, countless thoughts collided with each other. In the end, there was only one thought that kept tumbling through his mind. Impossible, impossible, this was absolutely impossible. Unfortunately, even though Chu Taidu took several deep breaths and blinked his eyes many times, the 4 spirit plants still existed in front of him. He had no choice but to accept reality. This wasn't an illusion formed from exhaustion. Chu Taidu, Qin Yu broke through the 4 seasons samsara and obtained 4 spirit plants. Now he has opened the black, white grinding stone. I have already done everything I can. You should understand what the consequences are if you lose. Tao Yuan's icy sound transmission sounded out in his mind. Chu Taidu shivered, shock filling his eyes. For seasons samsara, just this point alone had far surpassed his limits. Qin Yu's soul cultivation had reached such a formidable degree. I cannot panic. Chu Taidu roared inwardly. I have the immortal sect's supreme alchemy treasure, and I still have a chance to win. Even if my divine sense is greatly damaged, I cannot lose. He clenched his fists. A cold current gushed out from the black ring on his finger, directly pouring into Chu Taidu's soul. All emotions instantly vanished from his eyes, leaving behind only an icy cold indifference. Chu Taidu glanced at Qinyu and then closed his eyes. His divine sense entered the Mirage King bead once more. On the surface, there didn't seem to be any changes to his divine sense, but because it contained that cold current, it was like flowing water had been frozen, and its strength had risen to a terrifying degree. But there were pros and cons. After the strength of his divine sense increased, if it were struck by a strength that surpassed the limits it could withstand, then it would be like a block of ice, breaking into countless pieces. Qin Yu's divine sense phantom sat down cross-legged. A terrifying, oppressive strength rumbled through the heavens, surging in from all directions. This was the terrifying aspect of the black-white grinding disc. Once one's divine sense couldn't withstand it, it would be crushed to powder and the soul would be severely wounded. But at this time, there was a purple curtain of light around Qinyu. This curtain of light blocked almost all of the oppressive strength of the black-white grinding disc. As for the remaining bit of oppressive strength that fell onto his divine sense phantom, it was like a gentle breeze, unable to harm him at all. If Qinyu wanted to break through this barrier, it would be easy. As long as he could leave this place that was filled with terrifying oppression, he could do so. But breaking through this barrier so quickly would inevitably arouse attention. This wasn't the result Qinyu wanted. Another reason was that the oppressive strength of the black-white grinding disc could temper a cultivator's divine sense and make their soul more transparent. A chance to enhance the strength of his soul could be considered a lucky chance. Qin Yu's thoughts stirred. The purple curtain of light instantly dimmed, and the oppressive strength he withstood rose with it. Qin Yu's divine sense phantom trembled as if it would collapse at any moment. This was the limit of what it could withstand, and even though the purple curtain of light was thin, it still helped him resist nearly half of the oppressive strength. No wonder this person didn't care about face at all. The black-white grinding disc was indeed terrifying, but unfortunately it had no effect on him. Qinyu smiled. He closed his eyes, feeling the process of his divine sense being tempered bit by bit. Although this process was painful, it was also incomparably enjoyable. In his soul space, just what was the origin of the purple moon? Qin Yu's curiosity towards it couldn't help but grow stronger and stronger. There was also the blue sun above his Dantian Sea's 5-element mountain. It had to be closely related to the purple moon. When the immortal sex-killing curse technique descended, the sight of the sun and moon intertwining was branded into the depths of his mind. He would never forget it. In an illusion, a month, a year, or even several years, or even dozens of years, perhaps only a moment, had passed in the outside world and time didn't have any real meaning. Thus, when Chu Taida broke through the final trial of spring, summer, autumn, and winter and took out the fourth spirit plant, only an hour had passed since the start of the competition. Chu Taida opened his eyes, his gaze icy cold. He swept his eyes over the 4 spirit plants around Qinyu and then continued to probe the depths of the Sea King bead with his divine sense. A moment later, the 5th spirit plant appeared, followed by the 6th. Chu Taida looked exhausted, but his expression was calm, so calm that one couldn't feel any fluctuations of emotion from him. Spring, summer, autumn, winter, yin-yang. To be able to break through the 6th trial of the Sea King bead, disregarding everything else, his soul cultivation was already astonishing. But if one had the qualifications to do this, they would need to have at least a peak blue sea strength unless they were born with a formidable soul talent. Chu Taida had successfully awed everyone. The originally disdainful gazes were now filled with shock and awe. As for the spirit plants around Qinyu, there were still only 4 kinds. The black-white grinding stone phantom floated above his head, calmly spinning, emitting a pressure that made one's heart tremble. 2 hours had passed in the outside world, but 10 years had passed in the illusion, or even dozens of years had passed. Yet, Qin Yu still hadn't been able to break through. Could he have been trapped here? This wasn't impossible. It had to be known that the black-white grinding stone was a trial that no one below an almighty being could pass. Even the 4 seasons of samsara of spring, summer, autumn, and winter were much weaker than that. After all, although the 4 seasons were perfect, how could they compare with yin and yang? In some cultivation philosophies, all things in the world originated from yin and yang. They were truly omnipresent. Chu Taidu's eyes dimmed. Even with the help of the immortal sect's supreme alchemy treasure, he had still used up a great deal of energy to break through the yin and yang trials. But after a moment of hesitation, he closed his eyes once more. This brat Qinyu was strange and unfathomable. Who knew what other cards he had hidden up his sleeves? He couldn't be careless in the slightest. If he went all out, although it was inevitable that his soul would be damaged, as long as he could pass through the 7th trial, he would definitely win. Mei Ruliu had a look of praise in his eyes. The Mirage King Bead's 7th trial is the path of chaos, a trial that touches upon the esoteric rules of the world. If Grand Authority Chu dares to attempt it, that means he has some confidence in himself. The strength of his soul is something that even I am inferior to. Tao Yuan's gloomy face revealed a smile. City Lord is right. Those that can rush through the 7th trial are all outstanding geniuses. I have a premonition that Chu Taida will succeed. He turned around, his eyes cold. Arena Steward Kong, it seems it would be disrespectful of me to refuse 3 high-grade training rooms. Kong Mingqiao frowned for a moment before composing himself. Victory and defeat have yet to be decided. There are some words that shouldn't be said too early. If you end up being slapped in the face, it will be ugly. Tao Yuan sneered. Good. I want to see just how long Arena Steward Kong can be so stubborn. The one who wins today will inevitably be Chu Taida. With a supreme treasure in hand, breaking through the 7th trial wouldn't be difficult at all. Although Qin Yu's success was unexpected, it was impossible for him to accomplish this. Once he entered the 3rd trial, Tao Yuan's heart turned cold. His trip to 4 Seasons City might cause him to lose face, but in order to complete his mission, he couldn't care about such things anymore. Qin Yu had to lose. The Mirage King Bead's 7th trial, the path of primal chaos, was a world of primal chaos. If one's divine sense fell into it, it would be like a stubborn rock before the heavens and earth. As long as one could successfully awaken it, they would be able to make a breakthrough. But to accomplish this was far, far too difficult. If one's divine sense couldn't awaken, they would forever sleep within. Even if they were forcefully awakened, the portion of divine sense that entered the Mirage King bead would completely dissipate. This was the same as cutting off a complete cultivator's soul. The pain was secondary, but the most terrifying aspect was that it would damage the source of a cultivator's soul and sever their path of perceiving the rules. And wanting to repair it was even more difficult. After 8 hours, Chu Taidu's rotten, wood-like body trembled. He opened his eyes with difficulty and spat out several mouthfuls of blood. The wrinkles on his face instantly deepened, as if he had aged dozens of years. As he spat out a mouthful of blood, the seventh spirit plant appeared beside him. This was a dazzling golden flower. It seemed as if it were cast from golden water and emitted a noble aura. Feeling the pain of a saber cutting through his soul, Chu Taidu quickly withdrew the strength of the immortal sect's supreme alchemy treasure. All sorts of fluctuations of emotions returned to his body, and the pain in his soul became even more unbearable. He stuffily coughed, and his field of vision darkened. If it weren't for his will being firm enough, he would have already been defeated by this pain. But in the end he managed to persist. Chu Taidu looked up. His lips moved with difficulty. This is all I can do with all my strength. If Qin Yu is stronger, then I will admit defeat. His voice was weak, but at this time his eyes were filled with shock and awe. Cultivators worshipped the strong, and demonic path cultivators were even more so. Chu Taidu rushing through the Mirage King bead's 7th level was more than enough to prove his strength. And powerhouses deserved to be forgiven, even if they had done something wrong before. Moreover, was that really important? Stories were written by the victors. All light was destined to shine on the body of the last person laughing. The process wasn't the key. A full 10 hours had passed. In the dreamland, hundreds of years had passed. To a young cultivation genius, such a long period of time was far, far too long. It was so long that his consciousness would collapse and he would go insane. Qin, you still hadn't woken up or broken through the black-white grinding stone. In the eyes of the cultivators in the plaza, this was the worst possible sign. Perhaps this proud son of heaven, who was ranked 9th on the ancient perishment decree, who had stirred up the winds and clouds in the land of divinity and demons, whose fame spread far and wide, would suffer heavy losses today. Tao Yuan's lips curved up in a smile. His voice was cold and cheerful. It looks like I've won. Mei Ruliu revealed a look of regret, but his eyes were calm. It was clear there weren't too many fluctuations in his heart. Geniuses, especially young geniuses, people who were born to make people feel despair, should not exist in the first place. Chapter 459. Another 2 hours passed. After the miserable Chu Taidu swallowed a pill, his complexion became much better. As he looked at Qin Yu across from him, there was a gratified look in his eyes. Although he never thought he would be forced into such a distressed state today, the one who would have the last laugh would still be him. He had personally experienced the terror of the Mirage King bead. Once one's divine sense fell into it and was unable to extricate themselves, the consequences would be horrifying. Perhaps there wouldn't be a need for a third match in today's competition. Thinking of this, Grand Authority Chu's smile became a bit warmer. Although he had paid a considerable price, compared to the harvests, it wasn't anything at all. Ning Liang's fingers tightly twisted together. She used too much strength, causing her knuckles to turn white and leaving behind blue and purple marks on her fair skin. 12 hours passed, and Qin, you still hadn't woken up. If it weren't for the spinning black-white, grinding stone phantom indicating that he still hadn't given up, tears would have streamed down her face. But this sort of stalemate couldn't last forever. If Qin Yu couldn't break through the black-white grinding stone, his will would eventually collapse. Ning Rafeng had a dignified expression, and worry filled his eyes. He had finally seen a chance for the Ning family to rise up once more, but would it be destroyed now? Qin Yu had persisted until now, and hadn't admitted defeat. He feared he had already fallen into a demonic trance. Once he couldn't withstand it any longer, the backlash would be severe, and his soul source would likely be damaged. And if his soul source was damaged, unless there was some heaven-defying stroke of good fortune to repair it, his life would be completely ruined. Kong Mingqiao had a gloomy expression. He glanced at Qin Yu on the blue stone platform and then at the Dao arena. "Master, you must know the dangers Qin Yu is facing right now. Are you really not going to save him? If you delay any longer, you might not make it in time." Tao Yuan lightly said, "City Lord, 12 hours have passed. Should we judge Chu Taidu as the victor?" "No." Kong Mingqiao instinctively objected. He took a deep breath and said, "There is no time limit for the second match to begin with. Since Qin Yu is still persisting, we cannot judge him as the loser." Mei Rulia nodded. "According to the rules, Arena Steward Kong is correct. Qin Yu hasn't lost yet." He paused for a moment and then continued to say, "But I am inclined to agree with Grandmaster Tao Yuan's opinion. He hasn't been able to break through the black-white grinding pans in 12 hours, so his current situation isn't good. If we delay any longer, I fear he will suffer even greater injuries." Kong Mingqiao's complexion froze. He wanted to fight for Qin Yu, but he didn't know what to say. This was because Mei Ruliu's words were correct. If they decided victory and defeat now, they could stop the second match and forcefully awaken Qin Yu. Although he would still suffer damage to his divine sense, he could avoid damaging his source to a great extent. His silence caused Tao Yuan to smile. "Since you two have no objections, then fellow Daoist Sun, I'll have to trouble you to make the announcement." Sun Sen bowed slightly and stood quietly behind Mei Ruliu. When Mei Rulia nodded, Sun San respectfully nodded. He took a step forward and appeared in the air above the bluestone platform. Just as they were about to announce the results of the second round, Qin Yu suddenly opened his eyes. 2 hours from now, I will wake up. There is no need for you to worry about me." His eyes were warm and bright, and his voice wasn't weak at all. It was completely different from what everyone imagined. It was as if he hadn't been injured at all after being trapped beneath the black-white grinding pans for 12 hours. This scene left countless cultivators dumbfounded. Some cultivators that had already judged him to be defeated had particularly wonderful expressions. The Mirage King beads, black-white grinding pans. This was the Mirage King beads, black-white grinding pans. It was said that only 5 people below the level of an almighty being could pass through it, yet you were trapped within for 12 hours, and yet you were completely unharmed. Are you kidding me? And what was even more terrifying was that at this time, shouldn't you be bitterly persisting? How could you know what was happening outside? Tao Yuan's icy face revealed a clear look of shock. His eyes widened as if he had seen a ghost. Even Mei Ruliu, who had been pretending to be weak, forgot to continue coughing. Although he only said a few words before closing his eyes once more, everyone's gazes had completely changed. They were filled with shock and awe. Kong Mingqiao's eyes brightened. He laughed several times. "It looks like Grandmaster Tao Yuan's worries are groundless. Since Qin Yu is fine, then let's wait another 2 hours. It is still too early to make a conclusion about the result of the second round." "Humph!" Tao Yuan coldly snorted. His eyes turned icy cold, but beneath this icy coldness there was a trace of fear. Listening to Qin Yu's words, it seemed he had full confidence he could break through the black-white grinding pans in 2 hours. This information was too terrifying. It could not be broken by anyone below the level of an almighty being. This wasn't a lie. If Qin Yu could break through the black-white grinding pans, that was enough to prove that his soul cultivation had reached an inconceivably terrifying level. If so, then even the 7th level, the Tao of Chaos, might not be able to stop him. Chu Taidu had already lost the first round. If he lost again, a cold chill rose up in his heart. Although Chu Taidu would be the first to suffer if he failed today, he wouldn't be able to escape unscathed. Grandmaster Tao Yuan clenched his fists within his sleeves, and his complexion paled. His heart was filled with panic. Mei Rulia smiled. Since Qinyu is fine, then we will continue waiting. Sin cupped his hands together in agreement. He sighed and stepped back behind Mei Ruliu as quiet as a shadow. Everyone waited. At this moment, time seemed to pass at an incomparably slow pace, as if every breath of time was an eternity. Chu Taida's forehead was covered with beads of sweat. He had told himself countless times that Qin Yu might not be able to break through the black-white grinding pans. And even if he did, he might not be able to rush through the Tao of chaos. But his complexion still paled and his back was soaked with sweat. As the 2 hours approached, it was like his heart was grasped by a giant, invisible hand, becoming increasingly tight. Even his breathing felt like it was burning and painful. Perhaps the flow of time really could be stopped or reversed. But Chu Taidu clearly didn't possess this ability. So, no matter how much he hoped or refused, 2 hours eventually passed. On the blue stone platform, the black-white, grinding pans phantom above Qinyu's head trembled and then vanished from sight. His eyelids trembled for a moment before he slowly opened them. Shwa! 2 spirit plants appeared beside him at the same time. Along with the 4 from before, there were now 6 of them. Compared to the spirit plants on the other side, there was still a difference of 1. But even an idiot could tell that the difference was as great as the heavens and earth. First he broke through the 4 seasons samsara, and then he broke through the black-white grinding pans. Today, Qin Yu had allowed all the cultivators watching in the square to truly understand the true meaning of fierce. Puff! Chu Taidu spat out a mouthful of blood. His body swayed, and there was a pleading look in his eyes. He didn't want to die. As an ambitious and ruthless character, for him to reveal such emotions at this moment, it could be imagined just how desperate he was. But there were no waves in Qin Yu's eyes. They were as calm as a deep pool, pitch black and deep, as if they could swallow everything. He glanced at Chu Taidu, but it was only a single glance before he closed his eyes once more. Although he didn't say a single word, everyone understood what he meant. In today's competition, I will definitely win. The 7th level, Path of Chaos. This level wasn't like the black-white grinding pans. It wasn't beneficial to Qin Yu at all. The existence of the purple moon in his soul space allowed half of his consciousness to turn into stone, and the other half to maintain absolute lucidity. Although this sort of experience was interesting, Qin Yu didn't like wasting precious time on meaningless things. So, after turning into stone for some time and feeling that it wasn't too abrupt, he opened his eyes. A purple lotus throne appeared in front of Qin Yu. It seemed as if it were carved from the highest quality purple jade in the world. Every part of it was smooth and natural, vivid and lifelike. A faint purple light flowed around it, making one feel calm and at ease. The path of chaos had been broken, although this was already within everyone's expectations, and it was impossible for someone who could break through the black-white grinding pans to be trapped here. They were still shocked, speechless. This was because the speed at which Qin Yu broke through was far, far too fast. It was as if he had closed his eyes and then opened them again to complete his breakthrough. Indeed, the disparity between them was far, far too great. It was as if the clouds in the sky were compared to a puddle of black mud on the ground. Comrade Mud Chu's body trembled, swaying left and right, making people worry that he would accidentally break his neck. But even so, he was still like a roly-poly doll. He shivered and swayed, his eyes wide as he stubbornly stared at Qin Yu. There was still a chance, he still had a chance. Even if Qin Yu broke through the path of chaos, they would still be tied. As long as Qin Yu couldn't break through the 8th level, they would still be tied. If he entered the 3rd round, he could still win. The Mirage King Bead's 8th level was nothingness. Within the pitch-black darkness, there was nothing at all. When one's divine sense entered, It was like falling into an abyss of eternal darkness. The only way to break through this boundary was to reach the boundary of using one's divine sense to create electricity, to use the light of one's divine sense to tear apart the darkness and allow light to arrive. Only when a supreme being of the world broke into the calamity immortal realm would their soul be bathed in the radiance of the rules. Only then would their soul gradually strengthen and transform, finally reaching this step. Their soul was like colored glass. It shined in the darkness, shining with a radiant brilliance. This was the level of a supreme being. Qin Yu couldn't accomplish this. In fact, the disparity could be said to be far too great. But he had a crescent moon in his soul space. Although this purple moon was small, it could produce its own light. Thus, in the nothingness, the phantom of a crescent moon appeared above Qin Yu's divine sense. A cold and thin purple light illuminated a small and narrow space. Compared to the endless black nothingness, this purple light was as small as a grain of sand in a river. But this tiny grain of sand was so small that it was nearly negligible. It was like the last straw that broke the camel's back. With a light kacha sound, countless invisible cracks appeared in the void, and then spread out like a spider web. Then, the nothingness shattered and light sprinkled down once more. Qin Yu's divine sense was bathed in this light. He subconsciously narrowed his eyes and looked at something above his head. It took him a long time to clearly see what it was. The corners of his lips curved up in a smile. Is this the legendary and extremely boring 9th level of the Mirage King bead? It really is as boring as the rumors say. On the blue stone platform, next to the purple lotus throne, an 8th spirit plant appeared. This was a black flower. This pure darkness seemed to gather all of the night in the world, so rich that it couldn't be dissolved. As Chu Taidu, who was like a roly-poly doll, saw this, he simply closed his eyes and fell backwards. With a loud thud, he smashed into the blue stone platform. However, no one cared about Grand Authority Chu's distressed and desperate appearance. Everyone's eyes widened as they looked at the black-robed youth sitting cross-legged. He didn't look any different from before, but everyone's complexions were different. This was a kind of awe born from extreme shock. Anyone who could break through the 8th layer of the Sea Dragon King Pearl would become a mighty existence in the world. This saying circulated throughout the land of divinity and demons, but had never been heard of before. This was because those that had the qualifications to break into the 8th level had already stepped into the ranks of almighty beings. Today, everything was different. Qin Yu wasn't an almighty being, but he had broken through the 8th layer of the Mirage King bead. Moreover, he was a peerless, proud son of heaven on the ancient perishment decree. When the two of them were superimposed, even the strictest person would not doubt that as long as he was given enough time, Qin Yu would definitely become a tribulation transcender and step into the ranks of almighty existences. Willow Brow was disappointed and disappointed. Bitterness appeared in the depths of his eyes. He never thought that the great Tao that he had bitterly pursued but hadn't been able to break through would be open to others today. He took a deep breath and straightened himself. He cupped his hands together and said, "Congratulations, fellow Taoist Qin Yu." This congratulation was to congratulate Qin Yu for his victory today. But even more so, it was to congratulate him for nearly confirming his position as a future almighty being. This congratulation was bitter, but his smile was sincere. Like a shadow, Sun San, who had been standing behind, Meiru Liu, also bowed. His face was filled with admiration and shock. But no one saw that, after he lowered his head, he let out a light sigh. As he sighed, his eyes became cold and indifferent. Ha 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 ha. Kong Mingqiao laughed, as if he hadn't misjudged Qin Yu. But before he could speak, something unexpected suddenly occurred, interrupting him. In fact, as Kong Mingqiao was laughing, Sun San, who had bowed and cupped his hands together, suddenly took a step forwards. An incomparably terrifying aura erupted from his body. But that was it. After taking a step forwards, Sun San was no longer able to move. His body that was releasing a terrifying aura was like a lowly ant that was pressed to the ground, unable to move. Then, Sun San's entire body exploded. There were no broken bones flying in the air. He was like a human-shaped bubble that burst open and vanished without a trace. I said that as long as Qin stays in Four Seasons City, he is a guest of my Dao arena and no one is allowed to touch him. Since you have violated my agreement, then don't blame me for killing you. I will never repeat my words a second time, no matter who it is that acts. A light voice brushed past everyone's faces like a gentle breeze. There wasn't any dangerous aura, but it caused all the cultivators in the Grand Plaza to stiffen. It was like 1,000,000 mountains were pressing down on their chests, making it impossible for them to breathe. Kong Mingqiao fell to his knees, his expression sincere and excited. "Greetings, Master." To have the master of a Dao arena kneel without hesitation and even call him master, that could only be the insurmountable mountain behind the Dao arena. When solitary Westgate arrived for the first time, besides Woodchopper Fu, Qin Yu, and Kong Mingqiao, no one else was alarmed. Thus, when the master of the Dao arena, this unsurpassed existence, personally arrived, the hearts of all the cultivators in Four Seasons City were stirred up in great waves. In the blink of an eye, the entire Grand Plaza was covered in kneeling people. Countless heads that were normally proud and arrogant were tightly pressed against the icy, cold ground. Chapter 460. From a certain point of view, the mirage bead was like a fruit that wrapped itself in layers upon layers of hard shells. Once one broke through its defenses, they would be able to savor its sweet juice to their heart's content. Spring, summer, autumn, winter, yin, yang, chaos, nothingness. This was the Mirage King Bead's defenses. When Qin Yu broke through them all and reached the deepest layer, what appeared in front of him was the phantom of the Mirage King Bead. Qin Yu didn't need any reminders to understand this. For instance, in a game where he could pass levels, he would obtain the reward he deserved. It was just that the Mirage King Bead had gone too far, so the reward was itself. Qin Yu naturally wouldn't be polite. Moreover, this was something he deserved to begin with. His divine sense marked the Mirage King Bead phantom, and it trembled before shattering. Thus, the Mirage King Bead on the blue stone platform broke into countless pieces, turning into a cool strength that drilled into the point between his eyebrows and fused into his soul. There seemed to be a pained cough in his ears, but Qin Yu didn't have the mind to pay attention to it. The cool strength that fused into his soul caused his consciousness to tremble and fall into a blank space. When Sun San attacked, his mind was in a blank state. It could be seen that all of this had been planned out beforehand, and the other party had already made all preparations to repair any possible accidents. Unfortunately, solitary Westgate's attack had crushed everything to pieces. Qin Yu was still alive, so he could naturally enjoy the good fortune that the Mirage King Bead brought him. At this time, his soul shivered and he instinctively cheered in excitement. He absorbed the Mirage King Bead's strength with all his strength, constantly transforming and sublimating. This was an extremely mysterious feeling. In a trance, he didn't know how much time had passed. When he opened his eyes, a battle was occurring within his soul space. The two sides of the battle were a crescent purple moon above his soul and a pitch-black fog not too far away. They were like two wild beasts fighting for food, both wanting to monopolize the energy left behind by the Mirage King Bead that Qin Yu hadn't absorbed yet. Purple moonlight condensed into a beam of light, seeming as if it were real as it swept towards the pitch-black fog. But as it approached, it was wrapped up by countless black tentacles. The beam of light and the black tentacles seemed to have diametrically opposed attributes of strength. Wherever they came into contact, there was a sizzling sound of corrosion. The beam of light shook, but it couldn't break free of the black tentacles' imprisonment. But the black tentacles also couldn't cause any true damage to the beam of light. The two sides were in a deadlock, but they did not stop at all. As they devoured the Mirage King Pearl's energy, wisps of energy were absorbed by both sides. As a result, The purple moon grew brighter, and its volume seemed to increase a little. The pitch-black fog did not change at all, but its color became deeper and denser. When the last wisp of energy was split in half and swallowed by both sides, as a feeling that they hadn't suffered a loss, the pillar of light dissipated and the black fog retracted its tentacles. The purple moon still hung high in the sky, sprinkling down a faint purple light. It did not change at all because it had absorbed the sea worm King Pearl's power. Not far away, the black fog began to churn. Finally, a figure walked out from it, and all the fog entered his body. Undying! Qin Yu's eyes brightened with joy. In the process of breaking through the Mirage King bead, the purple moon had played a crucial role. The reason Qin Yu tacitly allowed the black fog to compete with it was because he could feel its undying aura. After he escaped from the immortal sect, the yin and yang energies of the primordial singular energy art had exploded. This seemed to have caused tremendous damage to him, and he had been in a deep slumber ever since. He never imagined that absorbing the energy of the Sea King bead would actually help him awaken. To Qin Yu, this was naturally a wonderful thing. At the very least, with Undying's awakening, he would have another life-saving card in his hand. Undying still had a featureless face, but he was always able to express the rich emotions in his heart. I've suffered a great loss. I've really suffered a great loss this time. It was easy to imagine a pained expression on his face. Qin Yu smiled. I will naturally remember the graciousness of saving my life. If there is a chance in the future, I will definitely make it up to you. Undying nodded with satisfaction. Little Master, we'll happily agree on this. Although I just woke up, I am still very tired. I won't speak any more. I'm going to sleep some more. He turned and vanished from sight. Qin Yu's eyes flashed. Undying was someone he had unintentionally summoned. Even now, he still hadn't figured out his identity. But at the very least, it seemed that Undying didn't have any ill intentions towards him. As for the future, that was a matter for the future. There was no need to think too much about it. Time would naturally prove everything. Qin Yu smiled. He looked at the purple moon above his head and slowly closed his eyes. On the blue stone platform, Qin Yu's eyes flashed open, a sharp light flashing through them. He felt as if his condition had never been better. The energy of the Mirage King bead had helped his soul advance once more. The final flaw in Qin Yu's path to the Blue Sea realm had been patched up. He had a faint premonition that he would soon be able to naturally make a breakthrough. Mei Riliu was the first to step forwards, an apologetic expression on his face. Fellow Taoist Qin Yu, I am truly sorry. This city lord and son, San, have been master and servant for thousands of years, and I didn't know that he had been bought out by others. This time, this city lord will definitely investigate this matter thoroughly and give you an explanation. For someone of Sun San's status to betray him without hesitation and even risk his life to kill Qin Yu, even an idiot could guess just who was behind him. But Mei Riliu still said this. This was a matter of attitude. Of course, even if he investigated this matter for 10,000 years, he was doomed to not have any results. After Qin Yu regained consciousness, he knew everything that had happened. As he thought of that extremely polite and humble Sun San, he felt a chill in his heart. Who would have thought that he was actually someone from the immortal sect? It seemed that if he wanted to live in peace in the future, he would have to be even more cautious. Perhaps some passerby that walked past him would reveal their fangs in the next moment. At this moment, Qin Yu was enlightened. If he didn't want to fall into an endless cycle of assassination and slaughter, he had to do as the Tao Arena Master said and abandon his identity as Qin Yu. But right now, he was the focus of everyone's attention. It would be difficult for him to disappear without a trace, and even if he did disappear, he would attract the immortal sect's most terrifying search. Perhaps the best method was to have his identity as Qin Yu die. Moreover, in front of everyone's eyes, he would be publicly recognized as dead so that the immortal sect would feel relieved. Then he would be able to escape like a cicada and grow in secret before plotting his future. Unfortunately, escaping like a cicada wouldn't be so easy. He would take a step first and see what happens next. All of this took a long time to describe, but in Qin Yu's mind only a few thoughts raced. He looked up at Mei Ruliu and cupped his hands together. Lord City Lord, you speak too seriously. This matter has nothing to do with you. He stood up and bowed towards the Dao arena. Since that person didn't appear, it was clear that he didn't want to be associated with him. There was no need for him to say anything more. Kong Mingqiao laughed. Fellow Daoist Qin Yu, congratulations on your victory today. But there is something I must tell you. The Mirage King bead that you swallowed is now my treasure. He turned and said, Grandmaster Tao Yuan, do you have any objections to this? Tao Yuan's complexion paled. He looked as if he had swallowed 10 pounds of flies. His teeth creaked as he said, If you bet, you must accept defeat. With these words, he turned and walked away, not caring at all about his appearance. Anger was part of the reason, but even more so because of fear. Chu Taidu had lost, so he was naturally the first to suffer. Grandmaster Tao Yuan didn't care about being skinned. His tendons pulled out, and his bones turned to ash. Right now, his only thought was how to reduce the punishment he would receive as much as possible. Moreover, he couldn't stay in the Zhao Empire any longer. Today, he had clearly made his stance clear. If he didn't leave as soon as possible, then the wild dogs of the Demonic Path's Shadow Division would be more than happy to quietly stab their shadowless blades into his neck. Immortals and demons coexisted in this world. This was a fact, but both sides wished for the other to die. This was something that had never changed since time immemorial. As the two most powerful and transcendent super-influences in the land of divinity and demons, they were well aware that the other side would do everything in their power to place spies within each other's sphere of influence. To a certain degree, both sides tacitly agreed to this. This was because only when both sides knew what was going on would there be no unnecessary misunderstandings. But if a spy were to appear in the public eye on their own initiative, that was the same as giving up their tacit approval. Both sides would kill the spy without hesitation. If one wanted to survive, escaping quickly was the key. But to a great extent, that also depended on luck. Chu Taida's luck was extremely bad. Just as he flew out of Four Seasons City, he fell into the hands of Ho Yuango, who was waiting in the darkness. As someone who wasn't an almighty being but was able to contend with one, and whose avatar had been killed by Purple Moon, he naturally wasn't in a good mood. Brat, consider yourself unlucky. Who told that bitch Purple Moon to be so heavy-handed with me? Don't you know that I've always had a vengeful personality since I was a child? As he spoke, he respectfully bowed towards Four Seasons City, expressing his awe and reverence towards that supreme powerhouse. When he didn't receive a signal that he wasn't allowed to leave, he happily picked up the panic-stricken Grandmaster Tao Yuan, who couldn't speak or move, and quickly left. The fainted Chu Taidu used an unknown amount of willpower to wake up once more. He didn't bother with Tao Yuan, who was leaving by himself, his eyes stubbornly staring at Qin Yu. He gasped for breath and lifted his hand, revealing a black ring. I have the immortal sex supreme alchemy treasure that can strengthen my divine sense several times over, but it can only be used through the path of chaos. Qin Yu, you aren't even a blue sea realm cultivator, so it is impossible for your soul to be so powerful that it defies the will of the heavens. Chu Taidu's smile was strange. You have a supreme soul treasure, right? Qin Yu was expressionless. He watched as Chu Taidu was carried away by the cultivators that Mei Ruliu had summoned. From start to finish, he didn't reveal any anger or any other negative emotions. Even if his thoughts were incomparably malicious towards a dead person, one still had to have a heart of tolerance. If there wasn't an accident, this should be the last time he saw the gasping Chu Taidu. Mei Ruliu coughed and smiled, as if he didn't know that someone was about to die in the shadows. He straightened himself and loudly announced Qin Yu's victory along with Kong Mingqiao. The 10 supreme soul treasures that were the stakes of the bet were handed over to Qin Yu in front of everyone. After carefully sensing his surroundings for a long time, he determined that the purple moon in his soul space and the awakened, undying hadn't issued any warnings. Then, Qin Yu carefully probed them with his divine sense. The 10 sets of materials were complete and of superior quality. Qin Yu took them out and put them away. Then he threw away the extraordinary storage magic tool that held them. Facing the immortal sect, he felt that if he could be 100% careful, it would be best if he was 90% careful. Otherwise, there would come a day when he would die a miserable death. The alchemy competition that attracted the attention of everyone on the Grand Plaza came to an end. The marvelous process left countless cultivators gasping in amazement. In particular, when the Tao Arena Master made his move at the end, countless cultivators proudly spread the news to their loved ones and friends. It had to be known that the strongest powerhouses in the world had fought against the heavens and succeeded in seizing life. They were undying and indestructible, coexisting with the sun, moon, and stars. They were the most terrifying existences in this part of the world. To be able to personally witness such a powerhouse fight and even hear their voices was naturally a great honor. Qi Sheng was also one of these people, but he couldn't feel any of this so-called honor at all. His face was deathly pale and his eyes were filled with panic. Chu Taidu had died in his room. Although he had already expected this, he still felt an incomparable fear when all of this quietly occurred. But the black ring on Chu Taidu's finger was still there. The immortal sect would never forget this supreme alchemy treasure. This meant that they would come again. Qi Sheng stood in the magnificent Chu family residence, listening to the frightened cries of women in the rear courtyard. His body gradually turned cold. Even though there was a rare and dazzling sunlight sprinkling down from above, he couldn't feel the least bit of warmth. Fear gnawed at Qi Sheng's heart, but he had no way to vent it. Thus, the tiny blood vessels in his eyes began to rapidly fill with blood. A crazed and cruel aura began to emit from his body. Qi Sheng turned and left. Because of Chu Taidu's death, the entire Chu family had fallen into chaos, and no one cared about him anymore. Breaking into the rear courtyard was a violation of the rules. As he arrived outside a gorgeous courtyard, Qi Sheng kicked open the doors and knocked out a maid whose eyes were red and swollen from crying. Then he grabbed a beautiful young woman with a pair of fox-like eyes and pressed her onto the bed. With a crisp tearing sound, the rags were tossed to the ground. Qi Sheng picked up her slender and white legs and fiercely thrust forward. The woman miserably screamed, but she soon took the initiative. She wrapped her legs around Qi Sheng's strong waist and pulled him closer. It was as if only by doing this could she feel a trace of safety. At some unknown time, a guest had appeared in the room. He wore black robes and sat down at a round table. He even picked up a teapot and poured himself a cup of tea. After taking a sip, the tea seemed to turn cold. He shook his head and put down the teacup. He had done many things, but from beginning to end, the naked man and woman on the bed hadn't noticed him at all, as if he were nothing more than a shadow. After a long time, with a muffled groan, Qi Sheng lay down on the woman's body. Sweat slid down his sharp muscles and fell onto the woman beneath him, making their skins stick together. "Why didn't you resist?" Qi Sheng buried his head between her breasts, his voice low and muffled. The woman hugged his head with both hands and gasped for breath. "I knew you wanted me. I knew it from the first time you saw the old man. I didn't want to lie to you. The Chu family is finished, and I want to find someone to rely on. You are what I want." Qi Sheng smiled. "You're quite direct." He was silent for a moment and then said, "If I don't die this time, then stay by my side. I can give you a life of luxury." The woman seemed to be moved. Her hands wandered up and down his broad back. Qi Sheng's breathing gradually deepened. Just as he was about to raise his spear and fight again, a slightly helpless voice sounded out. "Although I don't mind watching another live erotic show, I don't have much time today. I can only apologize for disturbing you." Qi Sheng leapt up, not caring about his naked body or the woman on the bed who was frantically trying to cover her body or her screams. Because he clearly remembered this voice, after he saw the black-robed man, Qi Sheng knelt down without hesitation. "Greetings, envoy. I wonder how Qi Sheng can be of service? Please instruct me." Laughter sounded out from the black-robed man. "You are indeed smart. No wonder Chu Taidu likes you so much. I came here today to discuss a matter with you." He paused for a moment and then continued to say, "Tao Yuan is dead and Chu Taidu is also dead. The immortal sect hopes to support someone else, and I have chosen you. What do you think?" Qi Sheng didn't hesitate at all. He directly kowtowed. "Subordinate greets, envoy. I am willing to serve as the immortal sect's running dog." The black-robed man nodded with satisfaction. "Since you have entered my immortal sect, I naturally won't mistreat you. I will temporarily hand over the ring that Chu Taidu left behind to you." As he spoke, he stood up and walked out. His voice was light. "The demonic path's shadow division has already arrived at Four Seasons City. You had best be careful and not lose your little life." Before his voice fell, he had already vanished from sight. Qi Sheng gripped his fists, excitement in his eyes. He thought that he would be unable to escape this great calamity, but who would have thought that there would be a sudden reversal of fortune? Although joining the immortal sect and becoming a spy was dangerous, it was nothing compared to continuing to live. Moreover, he had obtained the supreme alchemy treasure in Chu Taidu's hands. Perhaps in the future he, Qi Sheng, could become a character like Tao Yuan. He took a deep breath and calmed his surging emotions. He turned to look at the woman on the bed. Her face was pale, but she was still squeezing out a smile. She lifted the blankets, covering her, revealing her fair and alluring body. Qi Sheng was well aware that beneath the blankets was a vacuum. He had just enjoyed the beauty of this body just now, but he was still itching for action. He lifted the blankets and threw himself on top of the woman, sprinting forwards once more. Perhaps it was because of the stimulation of the great ups and downs he experienced, but this time he was particularly brave and fierce. 2 hours later, he roared out loud and finally stopped. The woman beneath him had long since gone limp, unable to move, but her eyes were filled with joy and longing, as if she were fantasizing about the wonderful future. But a fantasy was a fantasy in the end. With a light cracking sound, this nascent soul woman's eyes widened and her neck tilted to the side. She was not dead yet. She stared in disbelief at the naked man in front of her, who had just gone to the Mount of Sorcery with her. Her mouth moved with difficulty, but no sound came out. Qi Sheng's voice was cold, and his eyes were even colder. "I'm sorry. I want to live on and not make any mistakes. So you can only die." He lifted up the blankets and covered the woman's eyes that she couldn't close even in death. Then he washed up in his room and dressed before leaving. After taking several steps, Qi Sheng returned. He reunited the unconscious maid with her master and then straightened his robes and left. There were many matters he needed to attend to right now. As for the promise he made to a woman not too long ago, it was like a gust of wind in this cold weather, blowing away who knew where. The matters of this world were always unpredictable. It left one scratching their heads and finding it impossible to figure out what was going on. Who could have imagined that the previously confident Chu Taidu and the cold and arrogant Grandmaster Tao Yuan would die one after another in a single day? After leaving the Chu residence, the black-robed man looked towards the direction of the Dao arena. He coughed and bitterly smiled. He also never imagined that he, who was known for his flawless plans, would suffer such a loss at the hands of a little fellow. Qin Yu had forcefully broken through the CC King bead and taken away the treasure that he had worked so hard to refine. It was inevitable that he would suffer a backlash. A little fellow that wasn't even at the Blue Sea realm was actually able to accomplish this. Although he had suffered a bit, he still found it interesting. Suddenly, the black-robed man seemed to sense something. He turned and stepped away, vanishing from sight. Within the Dao arena, Solitary Westgate frowned, a cold intent in his eyes. But after hesitating for a long time, he didn't chase after Chenyu. As he said before, he was dissatisfied with the immortal sect. But provoking the immortal sect wasn't a wise decision. So he could kill Sun San and not this one. Chapter 461. As expected, when Chenyu returned to the Tao Arena, he didn't see Solitary Westgate. This master of the Tao Arena that soared above the highest heavens seemed to be abiding by his words and not wanting to be involved in any trouble because of him. But Chenyu always felt that Solitary Westgate was paying extra attention to him. Luckily, he didn't feel any danger from this attention. So, after thinking about it for a long time, he suppressed these thoughts deep in his heart. In the training room, as Chenyu looked at the 21 soul treasures in front of him, he revealed a gratified look. Although there had been many twists and turns, and he had triggered a series of dangers that far surpassed his expectations, it was a good thing that he had gathered most of the materials needed for the soul summoning bell to recognize a master. There were still 2 more months left, so perhaps he really could smoothly complete it. Before then, he wouldn't go anywhere. If there wasn't an accident, this would be the last time he would appear in the world as Chenyu. In the endless years to come, he would be like a small beast in the shadows. He would work hard to constantly grow, all the way until he became a beast king. Only then would he be able to leap onto a mountain peak and roar at the heavens. The immortal sect existed in the world, but it also didn't exist in the world. Only the cultivators it accepted and allowed were able to freely enter and exit the entrance that connected to the outside world. Otherwise, no matter how many mountains and rivers one crossed, it was impossible to take a single step closer. The immortal sect was mysterious and unfathomable. In the hearts of countless living beings, it was the highest and most supreme holy land in the world. There were rivers flowing with honey, mountains blooming with flowers, countless supernatural powers and immortal arts, and the unsurpassed great Tao that led to eternal life. The cultivators that lived there were all proud sons of heaven, all favored children of the heavens and earth. They had unsurpassed good fortune, and only then were they able to enter the immortal sect to cultivate. Unfortunately, these were only baseless delusions, so they were doomed to be illusions. For instance, the Buddhist kingdom disciples that were lying in the hall, bleeding from their heads and twitching. They were as innocent as sheep, but no one sympathized with them. The Buddhist nation cultivators dressed in plain silk robes all had benevolent expressions on their faces. Gentle smiles hung on their lips as they gently carried them away. From start to finish, their eyes were filled with indifference, without the slightest hint of emotion. It was as if all the peace they displayed was just a mask they wore on their faces. It made people wonder what was hidden under this beautiful mask. The Buddhist nation sovereign sat cross-legged. His tall and dignified throne shone with boundless light, magnifying his figure infinitely. He was like a Buddha that supported the heavens and earth. He was so majestic and peaceful that it made one want to prostrate themselves at his feet and kiss the soil beneath his feet in the most pious manner possible. The king was the son of the entire Buddhist kingdom. Snuggling up to him, one would be able to enjoy endless light and heat. Therefore, being burned by the raging flames of the sun was a very normal thing. The Nether Domain Master appeared outside the Buddhist kingdom's grand and dignified temple. The Buddhist kingdom cultivators that were walking around all knelt to the ground. He stepped into the temple, his voice light, as he said, "Sovereign, you must remain calm. The trembling of the Buddhist kingdom will be a disaster for the Buddhist kingdom." The Buddhist nation sovereign had an indifferent look in his eyes. After waiting for 100,000 years, the soul-summoning bell has finally appeared. I must obtain it no matter what, and no one can stop me. A tremor spread out from the space around them. The two of them were originally in the temple, but in the blink of an eye they were surrounded by darkness. Countless stars dotted the sky, as if they had entered the endless starry skies. Solitary Westgate has already arrived in Four Seasons City. Unless you are prepared to fight him, it is impossible for you to kill Chinyu. The Nether Domain Master coldly said. The Buddhist nation sovereign was silent for a long time. If I have no other choice, I will take action. You do not need to persuade me. The soul summoning bell is important to me, and you do not fully understand it. The Nether Domain Master's eyes turned even colder. Although the sovereign is powerful, you and I are both well aware that solitary Westgate has always been the most powerful existence amongst powerhouses. His pupils shrank as if he were thinking of some extremely terrifying matter. In the past, when solitary Westgate fought against the heavens, it wasn't just you and me who fought, but what was the result? Over the years, I can feel that he has constantly grown stronger. The Buddhist nation's sovereign had a calm expression. So what? In the end, solitary Westgate is only a single person. The Nether Domain Master shook his head. I will not help you. That will only cause the immortal sect to fall into a giant vortex. Do not forget that our true enemy is the demonic path. The demons in the demonic region and Yellow Springs will be happy to see the immortal sect and the Tao arena completely break off relations. The Buddhist nation sovereign revealed a smile. When he was expressionless, his expression was solemn and dignified. But now, just the slightest curl of his lips gave off a warm feeling as if spring had returned and all living things were reviving. Domain Master, you will help me. If solitary Westgate were to learn of what happened in the past, what do you think he would do? Bang! In the curtain of night, countless stars shined brightly. Brilliant starlight sprinkled down. The Nether Domain Master's eyes were bone-chilling. Sovereign, have you gone mad? The Buddhist nation sovereign laughed. His billowing voice caused the stars in the skies to tremble, as if they would fall down from the starry skies. To seize fate from the heavens, to become the strongest powerhouse in the world, to become undying and indestructible, to coexist with the sun, moon, and stars, what a wonderful lie. He fiercely looked up, his eyes bloodshot. That's right, I have gone mad. I have long since been a madman. The soul summoning bell can help me maintain my clarity of mind. Anyone who tries to stop me from obtaining it is my greatest enemy. The starry skies trembled more and more fiercely. A destructive aura blotted out the skies. Just as a terrifying collision was about to occur, the Nether Domain Master suddenly sighed. The soul summoning bell has a heaven-defying strength. Thus it is rejected by the world. The great Tao in the dark will not allow it to easily recognize a master. Even if Chinyu obtains it, he doesn't have the qualifications to use it. There is no need for sovereign to be so anxious. The Buddhist nation sovereign returned to normal. He was calm and indifferent, as if he were a completely different person from before. I can feel the faint aura in the dark. Chinyu indeed doesn't have the qualifications to recognize a master of the soul summoning bell. But once an accident occurs, I will directly take action, even if the heavens collapse and the earth shatter. With a sigh, the conversation ended. The starry skies vanished, leaving the two people still in the grand hall. The Buddhist nation cultivators walking around outside were peacefully smiling, as if they didn't know that they had taken a trip to the gates of hell. The Nether Domain Master turned and left, vanishing in an instant. The Buddhist nation sovereign traced a string of Buddha beads around his neck. It was unknown what material they were made from, but on the surface of each Buddha bead was a vivid and lifelike Buddha. Some of them were smiling, some of them were angry, some of them were crazy, some of them were crying. His fingers constantly stroked their smooth surface. Layers of Buddhist light shined upon them, making one feel an endless majesty and strength. But no one discovered that beneath the layers of Buddhist light, there were already countless tiny cracks on the Buddha beads. Chinyu, why don't you die? Put an end to all your pain and enter samsara. That is the best ending for you. You should die. You must die, the Buddha whispered. His lips curved up in a smile once more. In that instant, the Buddha beads shined with a blinding light. The entire grand hall erupted with trillions of Buddhist lights, illuminating the entire Buddhist nation. The trillions of lives that lived in the Buddhist nation all fell to the ground, bathing in the warm Buddhist light. They devoutly kowtowed and prayed towards the towering mountain peak that pierced into the highest heavens. Qin Yu obtained the final victory and sent Chu Taida to hell. This surpassed Ning Rufing's expectations, but it left him pleasantly surprised. This was because he saw in Qin Yu the hope of becoming a powerhouse. Little girl, hold on to Qin Yu tightly. Hold on to him no matter the cost. As long as he becomes the Ning family's son-in-law, our family will be able to completely turn around and become a true, noble family of the demonic path. Ning Liang suppressed her shyness and asked herself if she wanted to capture Qin Yu. After obtaining a positive answer, she half-heartedly followed her grandfather's arrangements. It was unknown what Ning Rufing said to Kong Mingqiao, but among the cultivators helping Qin Yu refine pills, a lively little girl soon appeared. Her beauty was breathtakingly beautiful, causing several normally cautious Dao arena cultivators to make several mistakes in a row. But after being summoned by the steward and given some instructions, they no longer dared to look at Ning Liang. Even if their hearts ached, they could only hide it. Qin Yu was busy refining pills. By the time he discovered Ning Liang, over half a month had already passed. He was surprised by her arrival, but after a moment of hesitation, he didn't say anything. At the beginning, he had already made his stance clear. No matter why Ning Liang came here, he couldn't repeat it a second time. Otherwise, he would thoroughly break her heart. Although he felt a bit helpless, Qin Yu's smile remained warm. He didn't give her any more time. After saying a few words, he turned and left. It wasn't that he was wholeheartedly avoiding Ning Liang. Right now, all of Qin Yu's efforts were focused on refining pills. Someone had offered him 3 sets of soul materials as a reward to refine an 8th grade Saint Step pill. Although he had successfully refined a Saint grade Dao querying pill, this was still a considerable challenge for Qin Yu. He couldn't afford to be careless in the slightest. Ning Liang didn't feel disappointed. This was because her grandfather had said that Qin Yu must have his own reasons for urgently seeking these soul treasures. She could completely understand why a man placed great importance on important matters. It was just that she didn't have the ability to help him. As for the jade box space, Qin Yu hadn't told the Ning family about it. One reason was because he didn't want them to bleed so that they wouldn't become enemies with each other. The second reason was naturally to distance himself from Ning Liang as much as possible, not wanting to have anything to do with her. Of course, the first reason was to protect the Ning family from being implicated by the immortal sect. Time passed day by day. Although Ning Liang could only occasionally see Qin Yu, she could feel that his mood was becoming increasingly poor. Every time they met, he would smile, but the reluctance in his smile caused Ning Liang's heart to ache. Finally, late at night, Qin Yu left his alchemy room. He didn't continue busying himself. He ordered people to prepare some food and wine, and after washing up, he picked up a pot of wine and looked up at the full moon above his head. Ning Liang hesitated for a long time. Then she walked out from the shadows. She respectfully bowed and said, "Grand Authority Qin, is there something troubling you?" Qin Yu had already sensed her existence. He originally didn't want to say anything, but as he saw her face that resembled Ning Liang's, he paused and said, "You know that I've been collecting some treasures. Unfortunately, I've been busy for 4 months and stirred up a great deal of trouble, but in the end I failed. So, my mood isn't too good right now." Ning Liang bit her lips. "Can I ask why Grand Authority Qin is collecting them?" Qin Yu drank a mouthful of wine and helplessly smiled. "I can't tell you the specifics. It's probably because there are some spirit insects in my possession that I need to use these treasures. Otherwise, some strength within their bodies will awaken and kill them. I won't hide it from you, but I've always told myself that the reason I'm in such a hurry to collect treasures is because I've spent far too much on these spirit insects. But The truth is that I just can't bear to do so. These spirit insects have been following me since a long time ago. Although they don't have much spiritual wisdom, they have saved my life. Moreover, they can remind me of friends that I haven't seen in a long time and that I might never see again. After drinking another mouthful of wine, Qin Yu shook his head. In short, there isn't enough time. I only have 4 months. But I'm missing one, the last one. Ning Liang hurriedly asked, "What are you missing?" She met Qin Yu's gaze and blushed. The Ning family has their own treasure house, and grandfather knows many people. Perhaps he can find it. Qin Yu's heart warmed. He appreciated her good intentions. Pre-celestial wood. He paused for a moment and continued to say, "According to the records, this is an extremely dazzling type of wood. It has the brightest colors and the most beautiful textures. It emits light in the darkness and bathes in the darkness beneath the light." Ning Liang tried to recall. Finally, she revealed a conflicted expression. "I will tell grandfather and have him help you search for it. It's too late. I can feel that the strength within the spirit insects will soon awaken." Qin Yu laid down the wine jar. "Perhaps they are doomed to die." Ning Liang blinked. "Perhaps I can think of a way to suppress the awakening strength within the spirit insects. If I have more time, I can continue searching." Qin Yu shook his head. "I've already tried." He had tried, but the result was naturally failure. Ning Liang knew that Qin Yu was a fierce person, far more formidable than she knew. But she hesitated for a moment and then said, "Grand Authority Qin, do you know of the Equipment Sect? I heard grandfather say that the Equipment Sect has a supreme treasure that has been passed down since ancient times. It can suppress all things in the world. Perhaps it can help you." Qin Yu's eyes brightened. "Equipment Sect?" He whispered. He thought back to the 2 cultivators he had met in the Infinite Realm. They had only met once and hadn't even exchanged names. The Middle Mountain Nation's Equipment Sect. Ning Liang nodded again and again. "That's right." Qin Yu bitterly smiled. "The Middle Mountain Nation is too far away. Moreover, I don't have the means to leave as I please right now." Ning Liang waved her hand. "There's no need to leave. The Equipment Sect is the most famous refining sect in the Qin and Zhao empires. They even have a shop in Four Seasons City. I heard grandfather say that the Equipment Sect's supreme treasure possesses an unfathomable strength. It can project a projection from trillions of miles away and similarly has the ability to suppress everything." Qin Yu's heart skipped a beat. If Ning Rufeng gave it such a high evaluation, then perhaps the Equipment Sect's supreme treasure really could suppress the undying will of the ancestral monster's remnant soul. As soon as this thought appeared, a sense of urgency rose in his heart. "Miss Ning, could I trouble you to tell old Master Ning that I hope to obtain his help in borrowing the Equipment Sect's supreme treasure?" Even if there was only a slight chance, Qin Yu was willing to try. Even if he failed in the end, he would have no regrets in the future. Ning Liang nodded. "I will go look for grandfather now." Seeing her leave with a face full of joy, Qin Yu's eyes flashed with warmth. Then he felt a bit apologetic. But soon, these fluctuations in his mood calmed down. "Equipment Sect? I met a disciple of that sect before, and that can be considered a connection. I hope that they can really buy me some more time." Of the 36 different soul treasures, he was only missing the pre-celestial wood. No matter how broad-minded Qin Yu was, how could he be willing to give up? Ning Rufeng learned everything from Ning Liang. Although he was pleasantly surprised, he also had a headache. He did know that the Equipment Sect had a supreme treasure, but when that Equipment Sect elder woke up from his drunken stupor, he had nearly turned hostile. Ning Rufeng had sworn that he wouldn't reveal it, and it was only because of their many years of friendship that the other party had reluctantly believed him. Many years ago, when Ning Liang's cold poison flared up, he had told her this story in hopes that it could distract her mind and alleviate her pain. But he never imagined that this little girl would remember it so clearly and even tell Qin Yu about it. Ning Rafeng was well aware that Qin Yu's performance was becoming increasingly dazzling. Although his own granddaughter was beautiful, the Ning family didn't have any heavyweight backing. The sign of a demonic path, noble family? If Qin Yu wanted to, there would be a massive number of tyrannical demonic path noble families and even demonic path elders that would be willing to give their most beautiful treasures to him. From Ning Liang's words, it wasn't hard to see just how much Qin Yu valued the spirit insects. If the Ning family could help him avoid any losses, that would be no small favor. Perhaps they could even help this little girl Ning Liang move Qin Yu's heart. Chapter 462. In order to avoid unnecessary trouble, Qin Yu took off his black robes and put them back on. Then he quietly left the Dao arena to meet with Ning Rafeng and Ning Liang. "Old Master Ning, I'll have to trouble you." Ning Rafeng calmly smiled. "Grand Authority Qin, there is no need to speak so seriously. You saved this girl's life, and my Ning family has always been grateful for this. I am more than happy to help you." He hesitated for a moment, as if he wanted to say something, but hesitated. Qin Yu cupped his hands together. "Old Master, providing information is already a great favor. I don't dare to ask for more. It would be best if I could borrow the treasure today. Even if I fail, I won't blame you." Ning Rafeng had an awkward expression, but he let out a long breath of relief. "I thank Grand Authority Qin for understanding. In truth, the equipment sex treasure has always been well hidden, and I don't have full confidence I can obtain it. But Grand Authority Qin, you can rest assured that I will do my best." After thinking about it for an entire night, Ning Rafeng felt that he should report this to Qin Yu ahead of time so that he could be mentally prepared. If things didn't work out, he wouldn't provoke any more complaints. Qin Yu's response left him feeling more at ease. Without saying anything else, the three of them boarded the Ning family speed car. After it started up, it flew straight towards the equipment sex property in Four Seasons City. Ning Rafeng was an old and wise man. Even though Ning Ling had her head lowered and didn't speak, the atmosphere in the car was still harmonious. Although Qin Yu wasn't in the mood to speak, he didn't feel annoyed either. After a moment, the speed car stopped. They stood in front of a majestic and magnificent shop's lobby. A rich and overbearing aura immediately rushed out. Ning Rafeng smiled. The equipment sect has become increasingly extraordinary these past years. They've made a great deal of money, and their influence has spread far and wide. I heard that they're already preparing to expand into the Yen and Qi empires. Qin Yu's eyes flashed. As long as the equipment sect agrees to lend it to me, I will give them a satisfactory reward. He could naturally hear this reminder. Ning Rafeng praised inwardly. Qin Yu was truly a smart person. The Ning family could help build bridges and even speak up for him, but Qin Yu had to provide the reward himself. Otherwise, if the Ning family were to do so, that would be the same as naked flattery. How would Ning Ling be able to maintain her composure in front of him? Don't say too much for now. Wait until you see the person in charge. It won't be too late to make a request then. Ning Rafeng smiled apologetically and walked into Equipment Pagoda. That's right, the equipment sex store was called the Equipment Pavilion. Although it wasn't anything new, it wasn't weak. Ning Liang carefully fell a step behind. Qin Yu paused, and the two of them walked side by side. She carefully turned her head. Ning Liang's voice was full of apology. "Grand Authority Qin, I'm sorry. I didn't know that grandfather also didn't have the confidence to borrow the treasure." She was well aware of how much Qin Yu valued those spirit insects. He had given them hope in a hopeless situation, but now that hope had been taken away, that in itself was a great deal of harm. Qin Yu smiled. "The Ning family provided me with help. Do you think I will feel resentment just because I can't borrow any treasures? Could it be that in Miss Ning's eyes, I, Qin, am so unbearable?" Ning Liang panicked. Just as she was about to explain, She saw Qinyu smile and point at the plaque of Equipment Pavilion. She immediately shut her mouth. She knew that Qinyu wasn't angry and was only joking around. Even so, she still felt a bit sad in her heart. It seemed that the Ning family really didn't have any way to provide too much help to Qinyu. She hoped that her grandfather would be able to smoothly help Qinyu borrow the treasure this time. Ning Rufeng was the true sect master of the Ning family and had even experienced the most glorious years of the Ning family. Once he was in charge, it wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that his aura was extraordinary. Although the background of Equipment Pavilion wasn't ordinary. When they opened their doors to do business, they naturally had to adhere to the principle that customers came first. A young servant, who was used to observing the situation, had already greeted them with a bright smile. "Honored guests, your presence brings light to our humble dwelling. Honored guests, please sit down and rest first. A new batch of tea has arrived in the store. I will immediately serve tea to the 3 honored guests." His words made one feel as if they were bathing in a spring breeze. It could be seen that the reason why Equipment Pavilion's business was so prosperous, besides the high quality of refining artifacts, it was also because of their business methods. Ning Rufeng revealed a faint smile. He flipped his hand and took out a token. "I have a great deal to discuss, and it would be best if I could discuss it with the manager of your store. I wonder which elder is currently in charge of Four Seasons City?" As the young servant saw the token, his smile became even brighter. He bowed once more and respectfully said, "So it's an honored guest with a long history. Forgive me for being blind, but the manager of our store is Elder Muley. 3 honored guests, please rest in the VIP lounge first. I will immediately pass on the message." Ning Rufeng put away the token and smiled, but his heart began to race. Coincidentally, he knew a bit about this Elder Muley. He had heard that this person was extremely inflexible and stubborn. Since he had bumped into him today, he feared that the difficulty of this matter would rise by 30% before he could even speak. The young servant respectfully led the way. They passed through the brightly lit hall. Soon, several crystal boxes hanging down from the ceiling caught Qinyu's eye. Ning Liang looked over. She cried out in surprise, her eyes filled with awe. Every crystal box had a different shape. They were all carefully polished and curved, reflecting a dazzling brilliance beneath the light. But what attracted everyone's attention the most were the scales lying quietly in the crystal boxes. Every surface was engraved with countless runes that constantly flowed as if they had a mind of their own. Even though the crystal boxes isolated out all auras, just looking at them caused one's mind to suffer a mental suppression. It was like a terrifying beast had appeared in front of them, rearing its head back and roaring at the heavens. Ning Rufeng's eyes brightened. What a wonderful treasure! The young servant stopped. He looked up at the crystal boxes and revealed a proud expression. He smiled and said, "Honored guests, you have good eyesight. My sect spent an incalculable amount of resources to slay a terrifying great monster and take its scales to refine them. Each scale can be large or small, and after activating it, it can withstand the strike of an almighty being. However, the scales of a great monster can only be encountered through a stroke of fate. Even in my sect, there aren't many of them. Once they are refined, they are distributed to the various equipment pavilions as a display of their store's treasures. They are not sold to the public." He smiled apologetically, his tone sincere. He had said these words countless times recently and had already practiced them to the point of perfection, making it hard for others to doubt his words. As for saying that he had good eyesight, that was naturally nonsense flattery. The treasure was placed in plain sight. As long as one wasn't an idiot, there was no way they wouldn't see it. Ning Rufeng shook his head. What a pity. If there were enough of these scales, they could be refined into a set of armor that could be called a supreme treasure. He didn't speak any further and continued forwards. Ningling's eyes shined with stars. She didn't care about how powerful the scales were. What attracted her attention were the exquisite runes on the surface of the scales that seemed like living creatures. If she could refine them into armor like her grandfather said, then it would definitely become the most dazzling treasure in the world. Ning Ling turned to look at the crystal box several times. With his black robes covering him, he wasn't afraid of being seen by others. There was a strange expression on his face. The VIP lounge of Equipment Pavilion was completely worthy of being called a VIP. Everywhere was luxurious, disregarding everything else. Just the sofa that was so soft that it seemed as if it could swallow a person whole was worth a lot of praise. The leather was sewn from snow sheepskin. This sort of spirit sheep grew on snowy mountains. Not only was their fur pure and flawless, but even their skin was snow white. After being carefully refined, the pores on their skin would naturally shrink and connect together, forming all sorts of beautiful natural patterns. Every piece was extremely valuable. As for the stuffing inside the sofa, from the faint fragrance that lingered in the air, one could tell that this was the most delicate down of red sparrows. This sort of sparrow was born with sand fruit as their food. The sand fruit itself was sour and tasty. It was impossible to eat it. But after the red sparrow ate it, its entire body would emit a refreshing fragrance. Only a red sparrow that lived for over 100 years would have feathers that would forever emit a fragrant fragrance and become a qualified stuffing. Just these few sofas required over a dozen snow sheep and over 100-year red sparrows. If converted into spirit stones, it would not be a small number. Ning Rufeng sat down on the sofa and coughed. Deep in his eyes, there was a bit more helplessness. Although Qin Yu was rich and overbearing, what the equipment sect lacked the least was money. If he wanted to borrow the treasures today, it wouldn't be easy at all. Perhaps he would have to throw away his old face and shamelessly refuse. Cough, cough, old friend, it's not that I don't keep my word, but for the sake of my granddaughter's future happiness, I can only apologize to you. Elder Muley arrived after a long period of time. He dived straight into the main topic. I heard that honored guest has arrived. I wonder if you have any requests? My Equipment Pavilion will do our best to satisfy your requests. Old Master Ning immediately put on a smile. I am Ning Rufeng, the head of the demonic paths Ning family. I have taken the liberty to disturb Elder Muley today because I have a presumptuous request. Elder Muley's eyes sharpened and he became a bit more cautious. He reached out a hand and said, "Honored guest, please speak." A demonic path's noble family could only be conferred a title if they had great merits for the demonic path. To a certain degree, the equipment sect had to bow down to the demonic path. Since Ning Rufeng introduced himself, he naturally had to maintain a certain level of respect. Ning Rufeng's smile became even brighter. I heard that your esteemed sect has a supreme treasure that can suppress everything in the world. I have a good friend who raises spirit insects, and because of certain reasons, I hope to borrow your sect's supreme treasure. Of course, in order to express our sincerity, we are willing to pay an extremely generous reward to your sect. Elder Muley's face darkened, and the coldness in his eyes caused the smile on Ning Rufeng's face to stiffen. I don't know where you esteemed guests obtain this information, but it is all false. My equipment sect does not have such a precious treasure. He stood up. If there isn't anything else, I still have important matters to attend to, so I won't keep you here any longer. He turned to leave. Ning Rufeng's complexion changed. He never imagined that the other party would have such a fierce reaction. But if you said you didn't want to borrow it, then that was fine. But what did you mean by saying you didn't have it? How could he explain this to Qin Yu? Elder Muley, please wait a moment. We really only want to borrow it and have no other intentions. I hope that Elder can bend the rules a little. Muley coldly coughed. I've already said it clearly. If we don't have it, then we don't have it. If you three continue to cause trouble without reason, then don't blame my Equipment Pavilion for offending you. These words were extremely impolite. Ning Rufeng clenched his teeth. I am an old friend of Elder Hai Mingwei." Muley stopped and turned around, his eyebrows furrowed together. Hai Mingwei. This person clenched his teeth for a long time. Then he glared at Ning Rafeng and flicked his sleeves as he left. His voice echoed out from afar. "3 honored guests, please wait here for a moment. I will return soon." "Huh." Ning Rafeng sighed and slumped down on the sofa. The wrinkles on his face deepened, and he seemed to age a great deal. Ning Liang had a worried expression. "Grandfather, are you all right?" Ning Rafeng shook his head. He looked at Qin Yu and squeezed out a smile. "Grand Authority Qin, there is no need to worry. I have been friends with Hai Mingwei for many years. With him speaking up for me, I will definitely be able to borrow the supreme treasure." As he spoke to her, he paused for several breaths of time. Then he deeply sighed. "It's just that today I betrayed an old friend. For the rest of my life, I will be tormented by guilt. I will never have the face to see my old friend again." Ning Liang's eyes were wet with tears. She tightly grasped Ning Rufeng's thin and wrinkled palm. She was moved, but also felt a deep sense of guilt. In the end, the reason her grandfather did this today was all for her. Thinking of this, she couldn't hold back her tears any longer. They slid down her cheeks. Ning Rufeng praised her inwardly. This was truly his grandfather's good granddaughter. This assistance was excellent. It would surely be able to touch Qin Yu's heart. "Brat, open your eyes wide and take a good look. My Ning family has never held anything back towards you. If you don't treat my granddaughter well, how can you feel at ease?" Qin Yu's expression was solemn and his heart was filled with helplessness. Although he had vaguely guessed that the reason why Ning Liang hadn't given up on him was likely because of old Master Ning. Did he really need to put on such a show? Looking at old Master Ning's expression, he knew that the equipment sect had hidden their treasures very deeply. Since he came to borrow them, how could he not tell them how he obtained them? So, it was clear that Ning Rufeng had already expected this situation to occur before he came today. The reason why he appeared so sad was naturally to help Ning Liang. He wanted to express the Ning family's sincerity towards him and use this opportunity to move his heart. Of course, there was still some guilt towards his old friend, but the proportion shouldn't be too great. But even though Qin Yu could see all of this, he could only maintain his composure. He didn't dare to reveal anything. Otherwise, if he were to fall into the eyes of a silly girl like Ning Liang who had been kept in the dark, he feared he would break her heart. Moreover, no matter what he was thinking right now, it was an indisputable fact that Ning Rufeng had sold out his old friend. Since he had received a favor from someone else, there was no need to haggle over anything else. So, as Qin Yu thought about it, he put on a very moved expression and expressed his thanks to old Master Ning. "Grand Authority Qin has shown great graciousness to my Ning family. So what does it matter if this old man sacrifices his life to repay you? As long as my granddaughter can live happily in the future, I will be satisfied." This reminder was a bit too blatant. Qin Yu couldn't help but cough. He didn't dare to continue. Otherwise, who knew what this clever old master would say? Ning Liang blushed. She coquettishly said, "Grandfather, what are you saying?" She glanced at Qin Yu from the corner of her eyes. When she saw that he didn't reveal any displeasure, she relaxed a little. Ning Rufeng's complexion didn't change. As an old and experienced man, the thickness of his skin was naturally directly proportional to his age. "Ha! I'm getting old, and my mood is fluctuating too much. I was just speaking nonsense for a moment. I hope Grand Authority Qin doesn't mind." Qin Yu smiled and shook his head, not saying a single word. Seeing that he wasn't going to harp on this matter, Ning Rufeng smacked his lips. Ning Liang hurriedly picked up a cup of tea, afraid that he would say something else. Really, how could grandfather be like this? Did Qin Yu think that she was using this matter to ask him for something? Ning Rufeng grimaced as he was scalded. He put down the teacup and couldn't help but glare at Ning Liang. "You little white-eyed wolf. Just who is this old man spouting nonsense for?" You actually dared to be so ruthless. I'm getting old. I just don't know when I'll make a mistake. How annoying. Before he finished speaking, he was interrupted by a sneer. Since you know you're getting old, you might as well cut your throat and die. Why continue living and harm others and yourself? As the words harm others and oneself were spoken, the anger in the old man's mind flared up. Ning Rufing's eyes widened, and he looked as if he had seen a ghost. With a whoosh, he shot up and stared at the door. His movements were smooth and unbelievably nimble. There wasn't even the slightest bit of weakness that he had displayed just now. #####. Chapter 463. The most awkward thing in the world was to sell someone out a second ago, and then have the person appear in front of you alive the next second. Ning Rafeng was currently experiencing this embarrassment. Even though he was old and experienced, and his skin was as thick as cracked tree bark, he still couldn't help but flush red. After a long time, he squeezed out a few words. Elder Hemingway, it's been a long time, ha 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 ha. Beside the returning Elder Muley was a middle-aged cultivator who looked to be in his 40s. His skin was fair and smooth, and he wore light blue robes, giving him a scholarly appearance. But right now, he was gnashing his teeth, ruining his temperament. Surname Ning, since we haven't seen each other for so long, how come you haven't died yet? Ning Rafeng shrunk his neck back. His smile was uglier than crying. Luckily, Elder Muley, who was as cold as a block of ice, helped him out of his predicament. Elder Hemingway, it looks like this person wasn't wrong. You were the one who told him about the sex treasure. Hemingway sighed. I drank too much in the past, and now I've run into someone who goes back on his word. Elder Muley, don't worry. I will give the sect an explanation for this matter. Muley coldly swept his eyes over everyone. At this time, Qin Yu could clearly feel a bloodthirsty aura emanating from him. He couldn't help but frown. Luckily, this feeling disappeared in an instant. Muley flicked his sleeves and left. I'll leave this matter to Elder Hemingway. I will bid my farewells. Bang! The doors to the VIP lounge slammed shut. The humming sound lingered in the air. Hemingway took out a white sphere from his chest. It was unknown what material this object was made of. He loosened his fingers, and it floated into the air. At the same time, a strange fluctuation spread out. Qin Yu's eyebrows shot up. The effect of this bead was actually similar to Ninth Province Furnace. It could completely isolate the aura inside and outside. Could it be that this Elder Hemingway wanted to kill him to silence him? Although Qin Yu thought the chances weren't high, he was still cautious and prepared to attack at any moment. Old cousin! A shout of joy caused Qin Yu's face to stiffen. He turned his head in surprise to see Ning Rufing's face filled with ecstasy. He threw himself at Hemingway, but what he received was a merciless foot. A loud bang rang out, causing everyone's scalps to turn numb. Ning Rafeng was sent flying backwards at an even faster speed, knocking over an incomparably luxurious sofa. He tumbled on the ground 7 or 8 times before finally crashing into the wall. The entire VIP lounge seemed to tremble. Ning Rafeng crawled up from the ground. He clapped his hands together, completely ignoring the large footprint on his chest. He smiled brilliantly. I haven't seen you in so many years, but you're still as hot-tempered as ever. There are juniors here today, so you should at least pay attention to your own status and face. As Hemingway kicked out, his complexion became much better. He swept his eyes over Qin Yu and Ning Liang and coldly snorted. You pig! If I didn't leave you some face in front of the juniors, then I would have already kicked you into the ground. What did you promise me back then? You swore to never speak of this matter to anyone. If you go back on your word, now that you have a son and a daughter and also a granddaughter like this, you probably don't think you need to do that anymore, right? Ning Rafeng awkwardly smiled. Old cousin, you must be joking. I was forced to do this today. If you still don't vent your anger, then I'll kick you a few more times. As he spoke, he revealed a heroic expression. Qin Yu blinked his eyes, a bit confused as to just what was happening. He glanced at Ning Liang, who was also stunned. It was clear she was also confused. "Screw off." Hai Mingwei frowned and scolded. Ning Rufeng wasn't angry at all. He smiled and explained, "Elder Hai Mingwei has some relationship with the Ning family, so he can be considered my younger cousin. We have known each other since we were children. But because of certain reasons, it wasn't convenient to reveal our relationship. Thus, there aren't many people in the Ning family that know of it." He waved his hand. "Little girl, greet your grandfather." Ning Liang respectfully bowed. Ning Liang greets grandfather. A smile appeared on Hai Mingwei's face. "This last Ling is even more beautiful than the rumors say. I wonder which family's young genius will benefit from her in the future." As he spoke, he took out a rainbow-colored ribbon. "I don't dare to refuse a gift from an elder. Accept it." Ning Liang shook her head. "Today's matter has already involved grandfather, so we have already been disrespectful. Ning Liang doesn't have the face to accept your generous gift, but the equipment sex treasures are extremely important to us. Ning Liang asks grandfather to help us." Hai Mingwei shook his head. "Since a gift has been given, there is naturally no reason to take it back. Even if you don't want it, I still won't help you in this matter." After a moment of hesitation, he said, "Something happened in the sect recently. The situation was tense, and yet you all jumped out." Ning Rufing's complexion changed. "Old cousin, what do you mean?" "Humph. Do you really think an empty, demonic path aristocratic family can scare people away? If it weren't for me expressing my willingness to take responsibility for this matter, do you think you would still be here?" Hai Mingwei coldly sneered. "I might even be implicated in this matter. While I won't lose my position as an elder, I will still be suppressed for dozens of years. I won't be able to move again." Ning Rufing's complexion really changed. "Is it really that serious?" Hai Mingwei lightly said. "What benefit is there in lying to you? Do you think I can obtain your gratitude? If possible, I hope that you and I will never meet again in the future." He angrily said, "It's been so many years, but every time I see you, I'm always met with bad luck. I really haven't missed a single time." Ning Rafeng was silent for several breaths of time. He cupped his hands together and said, "I was wrong. I thought that your status in the equipment sect wasn't bad. So you shouldn't have been affected," Hai Mingwei sneered. "Don't speak any more nonsense. Take advantage of the fact that I haven't met with a great misfortune to hurry up and take the juniors away. That way, I can think of a way to fill this hole." As he spoke, his eyes swept over Qinyu. Qinyu was wearing a black robe, so he couldn't see anything. But after he arrived, Ning Liang had respectfully bowed and Qinyu hadn't moved at all. Ning Rufeng clearly regarded this as a matter of course. This meant that the black-robed man's status wasn't ordinary. But at this time, Elder Hai Mingwei wasn't in the mood to inquire about the black-robed man's true identity. He only wanted to send him away as soon as possible. Ning Rufing's lips moved, but in the end he didn't say anything. He stood up and said, "Let's go." He had already done his best and had even dragged Hai Mingwei down with him. But with things having come this far, there was no turning back. Ning Liang wanted to say something, but she was interrupted by Ning Rufing's gaze. She bit her lips and took the 7-colored ribbon that Hai Mingwei had stuffed into her hands, an apologetic look in her eyes. Qinyu smiled. He cupped his hands together and bowed. "Greetings, Elder Hai Mingwei." Ning Rufing's eyes flashed with surprise. With Qinyu's intelligence, he should have already seen through the current situation. Why hadn't he given up yet? Was the spirit insect too important to him, or did he have some other confidence? As he thought about Muley and Hai Mingwei's performances, he shook his head inwardly and suppressed the second possibility. But in the current situation, it was nearly impossible to move the equipment sect to borrow a supreme treasure. Hai Mingwei had a cold expression. "Fellow Taoist, if you still want to borrow a treasure, then there is no need to say anything more." But I have a word of advice. It is best not to tell anyone else about what happened today. Otherwise, even if you are Ning Rufing's guest, I fear there will be great trouble. Qin Yu smiled. Elder Hai, rest assured that this junior isn't here to borrow a treasure. I only have a question to ask. Speak. May I ask, Elder, the treasure hanging in the crystal box in the hall? Hai Mingwei's eyes turned even colder. I'm sorry, but the cornerstone treasures of our store are not for sale. Any cultivator that entered Equipment Pagoda would be clearly informed of this matter. So how could this black-robed cultivator not know? He was trying to find something to say, and yet he still wanted to borrow the sect's treasure in a roundabout manner. He didn't like this sort of method of doing things. Qin Yu calmly said, "It's fine. I just thought that these scales looked familiar and wanted Elder Hai to help me appraise them. But since Elder Hai isn't interested, then I'll just say too much." He stood up and said, "Old Master Ning, Miss Ning, let's go." "Hold on." Hai Mingwei's eyes brightened. "Young man, you said that these scales looked familiar. Could it be that you have some in your hands?" Qin Yu nodded, his attitude matter-of-factly. Hai Mingwei coughed. "Young man, you are a guest that Ning Rufeng brought here. Although my equipment sect refuses to borrow a treasure, we aren't completely unreasonable. Today, I will make an exception and help you appraise it for free." Qin Yu hesitated a bit. He shook his head and said, "Forget it. Elder Hai's time is precious, so I shouldn't disturb you." As he spoke, he turned to leave. Hai Mingwei's heart became increasingly restless. He couldn't help but glare at Ning Rufeng, a threatening expression that said, "If you keep watching, I'll make you pay." "Cough," Ning Rufeng said. "Since Elder Hai has spoken, then let him help you appraise it. In this aspect he is an authority." He nearly shouted out Qin Yu's name, but luckily he changed it at the last moment and vaguely brushed it off. Luckily, Hai Mingwei's mind was completely focused on the scales in Qin Yu's hands, so he didn't notice this at all. At this time he held his hands behind his back, as if he were some high and mighty expert. Qin Yu hesitated for a moment and then nodded. "All right, then I'll have to trouble Elder Hai." With a flip of his hand, 3 millstone-sized scales fell to the ground with a clang. Hai Mingwei was startled, but when his gaze fell on the 3 scales, it was as if they had taken root, and he couldn't pull them out. However, this excitement only lasted for a moment before Elder Hai composed himself. He frowned several times and then squatted down to touch them. His lips curled up. "It only looks similar. These scales have a mediocre aura, and their quality is far inferior to the treasures of my sect. They can at most be considered medium-low-grade materials." Qin Yu nodded. He took out 3 more scales and threw them to the ground. "Elder Hai, please take a look at these 3. Compared to the first 3 scales that had broken corners, these 3 scales were intact. Moreover, there seemed to be a bit more luster to them." Hai Mingwei's heart shivered. He glanced at them several times and said, "The quality isn't bad. It's much better than the first 3. They can barely be considered medium-grade materials." Qin Yu nodded. "Then, Elder Hai, please take a look." Quang, quang, quang. The 3 scales that were thrown out this time were each the size of 2 millstones. Not only were they intact, but there were also countless exquisite patterns on their surface. Even though they hadn't been tempered, these patterns automatically emitted light. From afar, they looked like flowing waves. Hai Mingwei's eyes widened. Although he roared in his heart that he had to remain calm, his voice still couldn't help but waver. "These 3 scales aren't bad. They can be considered high-grade materials. If they were placed together with the first 6 scales, they could be refined into a breastplate." With his words, the equipment sect's reputation spread far and wide. As long as one wasn't an idiot, they would definitely climb up and ask the equipment pavilion to help them. This was what Hai Mingwei was thinking. He even imagined that when he brought these 9 scales back to the sect, those old fogies would stare at him until their eyes nearly popped out of their sockets. Leak news of a treasure? Humph, that wasn't a problem at all. As for giving Chinyu a high-grade breastplate, even if it was a full-body protective treasure, that wouldn't be a problem at all. Brat, hurry up and speak. As long as you open your mouth, I will definitely satisfy your request. Beneath Elder Hai Mingwei's barely restrained gaze, Chinyu thought for a moment and then flicked his sleeves, taking away the 9 scales. He shook his head and said, "Forget it. This junior doesn't lack a breastplate, so I might as well keep it. It might be useful in the future." He smiled and cupped his hands together. "I've troubled Elder Hai. This junior will bid his farewells. You're not allowed to leave." Hai Mingwei subconsciously shouted out. His eyes widened, and he was about to yell at Chinyu to hand over the 9 scales. But just as he was about to speak, he remembered that these scales belonged to someone else to begin with. His face twisted, and he squeezed out a smile. "I think these scales aren't bad. What use is there for a young man like you to keep them? How about you trade them to me, and I will definitely give you a satisfactory price." A sharp light flashed in Chinyu's eyes. "I'm sorry, but this junior has no intention of selling them." Hai Mingwei was breathless with rage. "What do you want?" As soon as he spoke, he knew he was in trouble. The black-robed man fell silent, a faint smile on his face. Hai Mingwei's heart shook, and he regained his composure. What a cunning brat! Had he been playing with him like a monkey all this time? His chest burned with anger. There was a treasure in front of him, but he couldn't take it. He clenched his teeth and shouted, "Brat, if you want to use these 9 scales as a bargaining chip to borrow the sex treasures, then there is no need to say anything more." His tone was firm and unquestionable. Chinyu lightly said, "This junior has more than 9 scales in his hands." Hai Mingwei roared, "That won't do. 19 scales. Delusional. 29 scales. Shut up. Brat, I'm warning you. The sex treasures cannot be lent to outsiders. 39 scales. That's impossible. Just give up. 49 scales. 59 scales. Deal." The hair on Hai Mingwei's forehead was soaked with sweat. His eyes were filled with fanaticism, as if he could burn a person to ashes. "Brat, of the 59 scales, give me at least 20 of them. Take out the last scale." Chinyu smiled. "This junior will give you 30. Hai Mingwei turned and walked away. His fierce expression made it seem as if he would ruthlessly tear apart anyone who tried to stop him. Ning Rafeng had a strange expression. "Grand authority, Qin, these scales—" Chinyu smiled. "Some years ago, I inadvertently ran into 2 large fellows fighting. Afterwards, they perished together, and I took advantage of the chance to pick up some scales. I never thought they would be so useful. Ning Rafeng, they fought and perished together." He looked at Chinyu. Although he spoke casually, he didn't seem like he was trying to beat around the bush. He sighed inwardly and thought to himself that comparing goods was a waste, but comparing people was a waste. Chin Yu was truly worthy of being someone blessed by the heavens and earth. He was someone who sat on a great destiny. His luck was so good that it left one envious. Ning Liang's face was filled with joy. She wasn't too shocked, because after experiencing all sorts of things, she had already become accustomed to Qin Yu's omnipotence. He was someone who could create miracles every time. Hai Mingwei left quickly and returned even faster. The incomparably cold and aloof elder muley was dragged around in a distressed state. But as Qin Yu took out a massive pile of scales, the doubt in his eyes turned into a complete fanaticism. He was even crazier than Hai Mingwei. "I will apply to the sect right now," Muley savagely said. Hai Mingwei revealed a worried expression. "I fear that the elders in the sect won't agree." Muley revealed a set of white teeth. "They wouldn't dare." His eyes fell on the scales. "With these, we can create the world's most formidable armor, one that will surely be passed down through the ages. This is my dream, and it is also the dream of all high-level refiners in the sect. Anyone who dares to stop us will be torn to shreds. He coldly looked at Qin Yu. Take good care of your scales and wait for our transaction. If anything happens, the equipment sect will not let you off. Chapter 464. The equipment sect's response was extremely quick. Just after noon, Mu Li and Hai Mingwei walked into the VIP lounge with bloodshot eyes and tired faces. They looked at Qin Yu and said, The equipment sect has agreed to your transaction. The projection still needs to be prepared. At the latest, it will descend tonight. Mu Li hesitated, a bit uncomfortable. Qin Yu slowly shook his head. I'm sorry, but I must obtain the projection of the treasure before I can give the scale armor to you too. What a despicable person. Mu Li's face darkened. Although Hai Mingwei was disappointed, he was much calmer. All right. The two turned and left. Mu Li's gloomy expression disappeared. He lightly said, Elder Hai, don't you think that the black-robed cultivator's voice is a bit familiar? Hai Mingwei rubbed his temples. There are countless lives in this world, and there are many who have similar voices. Is it wrong that we don't know who he is? Mu Li smiled. That's right, we don't know him. The two glanced at each other and could see the relief in each other's hearts. Luckily, the transaction would be completed tonight. If those old fellows from the sect arrived, they would likely be willing to give up these incomparably precious scales in order to prevent this transaction. As for whether or not the equipment sect would discover them in the future, and whether or not there would be trouble if they did, that was a matter for the future. There was no need to consider it now. Moreover, what was done. Even if they found out, the sect would only help them conceal it. After all, the immortal sect was a colossal existence. Although they were extremely far away, and the equipment sect had close relations with the demonic path, it was best not to provoke them. As the night gradually darkened, Qin Yu finally obtained his goal, a foot-tall, pitch-black stone mountain. There wasn't the least bit of mystical about it, but as he held it in his hand, he could feel the tyrannical might contained within this common-looking mountain. It was clearly just a phantom, but when it fell into his hand, it felt as if it weighed 1,000 pounds of gold. And what was even more terrifying was that when his divine sense approached the black stone mountain, it felt as if it had fallen into a swamp. The invisible rules of the world around it had changed. If a phantom could change the rules, then the might of the main body could be imagined. It was no wonder the equipment sect had tried so hard to hide it. Once this treasure was exposed to the world, it would draw countless greedy eyes. Mu Li coldly said, You must swear not to tell a second person of today's matter. Otherwise you will have no hope of reaching the great Tao for the rest of your life. For different people, the binding power of an oath was different. But for Qin Yu, this oath was the most suitable. He was a cultivator on the ancient perishment decree, and also a peerless, proud son of heaven that had broken through the Mirage King bead. The highest great Tao was what he diligently pursued. This was without a doubt. Qin Yu wasn't surprised that Equipment Pagoda had discovered his identity. This was something he had done intentionally. It had to be known that even if it was a transaction, both parties had to be on the same level, or at least on a similar level. Otherwise, the transaction would likely become a one-sided robbery. His status was enough for the equipment sect to value him so that they wouldn't have any random thoughts about him. Although Qin Yu didn't fear them, he still wanted to avoid trouble as much as possible. Mu Li's expression softened a little. He extended his hand and said, Give me the scale. Qin Yu flicked his sleeves, and 60 scales appeared. He sincerely said, This extra scale can be considered this junior's thanks. I've troubled Elder Muley today. Mu Li took a deep look at him, flicked his sleeves, took the scale armor, and left. After carefully sensing the black mountain in his hand, Qin Yu's thoughts stirred and it vanished from sight, turning into the phantom of a mountain in his palm. He pushed open the door. There was already a young servant waiting outside. After smoothly leaving Equipment Pagoda, the anxiously waiting Ning Rafeng and Ning Liang revealed relaxed expressions. After boarding the speed car and leaving Equipment Pagoda, Qin Yu pulled down his black robes and cupped his hands together. This time, I must thank old Master Ning. These words caused Ning Rafeng to smile. It was clear that Qin Yu had smoothly achieved his goal. Grand Authority Qin, there's no need to be so polite. At most, I only provided information. The reason I was able to borrow the treasures of Equipment Pagoda was because of Grand Authority Qin's own ability. Qin Yu smiled, not saying much. Although Ning Rafeng wasn't wrong. If he didn't have any information, then no matter how many methods he had, it would all be in vain. A favor was a favor. It was fine as long as he remembered it. There was still some distance from the Dao arena. Qin Yu put on his black robes and got off the car. His figure melted into the darkness, and he smoothly returned to the Dao arena. Without any delay, he summoned the purple-back blue-wing ants. He lifted his palm, and the phantom of a black mountain flew out. This mountain grew with the wind, growing to 1,000 feet in the blink of an eye. Luckily, Qin Yu had already expected this and chose an open area. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to place it there. With a loud humming sound, the aura of the black mountain phantom erupted. In that instant, the rules of the world changed. Countless sealing strengths fell down like a torrential storm. These wild sealing strengths seemed to have a mind of their own. They pierced through the purple-back blue-wing ants and rushed towards the fragments of the indestructible monster ancestors while hidden within their bodies. Hum! The phantom of a wild rabbit appeared beneath the black mountain. It looked up, its eyes filled with the vicissitudes of time. Its funny, three-petal mouth exuded an indescribable dignity. Haha, you actually found this treasure. Brat, your luck isn't bad, but the most it can do is buy you 2 more months. The wild rabbit phantom grinned. Believe me, the soul-summoning bell won't recognize a master so easily. As the wild rabbit phantom finished speaking, it turned into motes of light that submerged back into the purple-back blue-wing ants. Qin Yu's complexion darkened, but soon he took a deep breath and suppressed all his thoughts. 2 months of time was already a good result. He only lacked one last thing. He didn't believe he would fail at the last moment. It's right. Little master, it really is difficult for you to recognize a master for the soul-summoning bell. The shadow wriggled, and Undying quietly walked out. He looked up at the black mountain, a look of praise in his eyes. What a good treasure. Unfortunately, it's only a phantom. If I could obtain the main body, it would be infinitely useful. Qin Yu turned his head. Why? Undying shrugged, not caring about his directness at all. This is the rule. The more heaven-defying the soul-summoning bell is, the more difficult it is to recognize a master. The so-called equivalent exchange, although not appropriate, is the general meaning. Qin Yu furrowed his eyebrows. But before he could think further, Undying continued to say, I didn't come out today to strike little master's confidence. Rather, there is an important matter. As your servant, I must warn you of my little master. His voice became dignified. Someone has set their eyes on you. On the way back to the Dao arena, they hid themselves very well, almost even deceiving me. Qin Yu's heart chilled. Who is it? I don't know. I only sensed a trace of the aura left behind by that person. But there's one thing I am sure of, and that is that this person is very, very strong. Little master, there is no way you can resist him. However, this person seems to have some scruples. He could have easily captured you, but in the end he chose to continue hiding. Qin Yu frowned. The reason this person didn't dare to attack him should be because he feared the Dao arena master. He absolutely couldn't use his current identity any longer. Once this matter was concluded, he would have to find a way to escape. Undying, pay attention in the future. If this person comes out again, immediately tell me. Undying bowed. Of course. I don't want little master to be killed by someone. He turned and melted into a shadow, vanishing from sight. Qin Yu glanced at the purple-back blue-wing ants at the base of the black mountain. After a moment of thought, he hurriedly left. To Undying, this black shadow was a kingdom of eternal darkness. He was this deathly still, without the least bit of life, the king of this kingdom. At this time, Undying was sitting on a throne condensed from pure darkness aura. He placed a hand on his forehead, as if he were thinking about something. After a long time, he sighed. With a flick of his sleeves, the darkness began to tumble about, calmly parting to the sides, revealing stone steps that led to who knew where. Undying walked down the stone steps. They were very, very long. After an unknown period of time, a magnificent underground palace appeared in front of Undying. This palace was empty except for an altar condensed from the power of darkness. A faint light emitted from the center of the altar, becoming the only source of light here. Chains condensed from the power of darkness tightly wrapped around Spirity, outlining the perfect curves of her body. Her fair skin was as delicate as snow, but it was incomparably pale, giving off a soul-stirring sense of beauty. Her long eyelashes moved, and Spirity slowly opened her eyes. You should know that every bit of my strength is precious right now. I don't have the energy to waste with you. Undying's voice was faint. I'm just curious. Why didn't you tell Qin Yu just how much you paid to help him shield from the demonic altar? There's no point. Spirity had an indifferent expression. Since I chose him, I am willing to sacrifice everything for him. Since this is something I did voluntarily, why should I put him under so much pressure? Undying sneered. Chose him? Why? Is it because of his good luck? He paced back and forth, his voice becoming increasingly sharp. For you and I to live until now, in terms of luck alone, we're much better than him. Otherwise, we would have long since vanished from this world. It wasn't easy for us to survive, so how could we so easily hand over our future? Spirity glanced at him. Her lips curved up in a smile. It looks like Qin Yu has done well. He actually managed to tempt you. Otherwise, you wouldn't be telling me these things. Rather than questioning me, it would be better to say that you are trying to persuade yourself. But you and I both know that we are people abandoned by the world. If we wish to truly return, we must make a choice. Otherwise, what right do we have to ask others to help us in the future? She closed her eyes, her expression serene. I chose my own future and am filled with hope for it. So, even though I am suffering right now, even though I have to endure the torment of the power of darkness, my heart is still calm. Undying, hesitating isn't a good thing for you. I hope you can figure this out soon. In the darkness, Undying's voice resounded through the air as he gnashed his teeth. One couldn't help but admit that even though he didn't have any facial features, it was still surprising that he could speak like this. I won't easily make a bet. This is my last chance. You should know that this is my last chance. He turned and walked away. As he left the hall, his voice echoed out from afar. There's one thing you are right about. Qin Yu has done well, and his luck is amazing. He actually has a chance to complete the Soul Summoning Bell's master recognition. If he can really succeed, then I will accompany you in your madness. Everything else will depend on his good fortune. On the altar of the power of darkness, Spirity's eyes opened. She revealed a look of relief, pride, and worry that she couldn't suppress. Precious treasures of the heavens and earth possessed heaven-defying might, but they were often accompanied by dangerous twins. Completing a master recognition process wasn't simple at all. Qin Yu, you have to work hard. I believe that you can do it. Don't disappoint me. With a light sigh, Spirity closed her eyes and fell into a deep sleep. She could only rely on this sleep to slow down the consumption of her strength. Perhaps Qin Yu had guessed something, so he had been avoiding borrowing the strength of the demonic path altar as much as possible. This allowed the pressure on her to lessen by a great deal. It was unknown what she was thinking, but the sleeping Spirity revealed a faint smile. Black Demon Sect. Tuba and Tutu completed a new transaction. They placed the spirit plant materials and seeds separately. This was a good deal, but there wasn't much happiness on their faces. Outside the hall, Su Sheng arrived with several Black Demon Sect cultivators. He was all smiles. "You too. I have found some good business for you. You should give me a thick red packet." Tuba laughed. "Of course. You should discuss this with my brother. I just happen to have some matters that I wish to discuss with Steward Su." The two people walked into the hall. Su Sheng's smile vanished. He clenched his teeth and roared, "Where is the Grandmaster?" Tuba had a cold expression. "He is in seclusion. Those words can be used to deceive others. Let me tell you, there are already people in the sect investigating this matter." Su Sheng lowered his voice. "Yesterday, several disciples were sent to the dungeon. Although the interrogation was done in secret, I still managed to obtain some news. There are people investigating Grandmaster Yao's current condition. Don't tell me you didn't notice anything." Su Sheng sneered. "Recently, haven't there been more and more cultivators coming here to exchange for pills? How long can the pills in your hands last? Once the pills can no longer support the exchange, you should know what will happen next." Tuba frowned. He knew why His Highness stayed at the Black Demon Sect. If someone discovered that he had left without permission, he feared there would be complications at this critical juncture. He thought about it again and again. He looked at the nervous Su Sheng and sighed. "I have no idea where the Grandmaster went." Su Sheng's heart shrank. Did the Grandmaster say when he would return? Tuba had a calm expression. Before leaving, the Grandmaster said that he would return in 4 months. Su Sheng's fingers trembled. He stared at Tuba. "Don't tell me that the Grandmaster has already left for 4 months." Tuba calmly said, "To be more precise, it's been 5 months and 14 days. The world spun around him, and Su Sheng's field of vision darkened. You bastard. I asked you dozens of times. Why didn't you tell me?" Tuba sneered. "If it weren't for the fact that you were loyal to the Grandmaster, I wouldn't have told you even if I asked you 100 times. Don't worry. Nothing will happen to the Grandmaster. He will return soon." Su Sheng shivered. He didn't know who was investigating Ning Qin's whereabouts, but he could smell something that left him feeling uneasy. This matter wasn't as simple as it seemed. He had already pledged his allegiance to Ning Qin. If something were to happen to him, he would definitely be implicated. Luckily, the only ones who knew of this matter were the 2 barbarians here. Tuba sneered. "If you dare to have any crooked thoughts, I can easily twist your neck. The Grandmaster will definitely return. You only need to remember this." Su Sheng's heart chilled. It was only then that he remembered that the barbarian in front of him had the absolute strength to crush him. His lips moved and he clenched his teeth. "I will think of a way to delay for as much time as possible. If you have a way to contact the Grandmaster, then ask him to hurry back as soon as possible. Otherwise, both you and I will be in deep trouble." Su Sheng turned and left the hall. He had a new smile on his face. He exchanged a few words with several cultivators who had completed their transactions. Then, after a burst of laughter, he bid his farewells and left. Tuba could no longer maintain his composure. His expression was calm and confident, but worry began to appear in his eyes. "Your Highness, just where are you?" What was nothingness? From ancient times until now, through the endless years, trillions upon trillions of brilliant lives had appeared. They were like meteors that illuminated the skies, but none of them were able to obtain a precise definition. It was dark, without light existing within. It was as if it was a natural opposition to light. Thus, it was unable to give birth to any aura of life. It was like a dead, incomparably cold black sea. Empty, icy cold, eternally silent. However, it was exactly such a lifeless, black ocean that had countless islands that were integrated with the darkness were floating in it. Those islands were large and small, but they floated in the void quietly and flowed along with invisible forces. If someone could reach the nothingness and break open the surface of these islands, They would discover that within these islands were independent spatial fragments. Perhaps they were barren, or perhaps they were filled with life. Some even had intelligent life forms that multiplied and multiplied, as if the island itself was the entire world. Within a medium-sized island, the sun hung high in the sky. Warm sunlight gently sprinkled down on the earth. A stalk of green grass stood at the end of one's line of sight. It was so tall that a single leaf seemed capable of covering the skies. The golden veins gradually turned purple. They were translucent, like some sort of jade. They seemed warm and translucent, but they emitted a heaven-shaking and earth-shattering aura. It was as if a single leaf of grass could tear apart the heavens and earth, could shatter stars. It was just that this tyrannical grass was like a guard right now. It stretched out its body, not allowing its leaves to block the sunlight that sprinkled down from above. Beneath its gaze was an endless medicinal field. Countless precious spiritual plants grew within like weeds. A gust of wind blew past, bringing with it an intoxicating medicinal fragrance. Suddenly, somewhere in the medicinal field, the ground split open. A grass root drilled out, and the space in front of it suddenly fell into darkness. In this darkness, two thin branches grew at a speed visible to the naked eye. They rapidly grew thick, and their gray surface was gradually filled with color. Although these fine textures seemed chaotic and without any order, there was an indescribable beauty to them. It was as if this world was like this, as if it was only natural for it to be like this. The grass root swayed back and forth in a daze. Its intuition told it that these two branches weren't ordinary, but it seemed to have grown from a root that its master had casually tossed in not too long ago. Did its master not know that this was a precious treasure? Swaying back and forth, the grass root fiercely suppressed the disrespectful thoughts in its heart towards its master. Its master was a supreme existence that possessed all benevolence and wisdom. How could he not know this? Chapter 465. Perhaps this really confirmed the words of the ancestral monster's remnant soul and immortality. It wasn't easy for a heavenly treasure to recognize a master. A month and a half passed, and there was still no news of the pre-celestial wood. Qin Yu's heart was filled with unwillingness and anticipation, but now he was forced to accept reality. His heart was filled with helplessness. Qin Yu let out a long breath and stood up. His heart was restless, and his cultivation was greatly reduced. He decided to temporarily calm his mood. The Tao Arena's top training room naturally had excellent scenery. Qin Yu sat in the shade of the trees, his fingers gently tapping the table. He couldn't help but ponder. During this time he had constantly raised the price to search for the pre-celestial wood. He had visited all the shops in Four Seasons City, and even asked Kong Mingqiao. But in the end he hadn't found anything. Could it be that, after all his efforts, he still couldn't avoid the fate of abandoning the purple-back blue-wing ants? Puff! A light sound awakened Qin Yu. He pulled his fingers out from the exquisite table and looked at the crisscrossing marks on the table. He couldn't help but bitterly smile. Luckily, he had some harvests during this time. His path of metal was approaching perfection, and he could make a breakthrough at any moment. At this time, Qin Yu's eyes flashed. He lifted a hand, and a jade slip fell into his hand. As he probed it with his divine sense, his eyes widened, and he revealed a look of pleasant surprise. He stood up and walked to the training room's door. With a flick of his sleeves, he saw Kong Mingqiao standing outside. He smiled and said, "It looks like this item is indeed important to fellow Taoist Qin Yu. This is a catalog sent by the auction house. The item you are interested in is on page 62. As he spoke, he took out a jade slip. After pouring in magic power, the jade slip projected a clear image. Qin Yu flipped to page 62. In the dense catalog of auction items, he found an incomparably black object that looked like a withered branch. There was a brief record below it. Number 137, a withered branch obtained from an unknown land. Attributes unknown, effects unknown. In the light it is black, and in the darkness it emits light. The image was small, and the introduction was brief. It was clear that the auction house didn't value this item too much. Qin Yu stared at it for a long time, and then looked up. Kong Mingqiao smiled. There is a universe within. These words dispelled the last bit of doubt in Qin Yu's heart. Wild joy gushed out from his heart. He cupped his hands together and deeply bowed. Thank you, Arena Steward Kong. He didn't know where Kong Mingqiao got this information from, but there was no reason for him to lie to him. Moreover, the phrase in the light the color is dark, and in the darkness there is light was an extremely strong piece of evidence. Khanate Wood. This was Khanate Wood. Qin Yu flipped through the invitation card and casually tossed it into his identity token. He smiled. When he received this invitation card that would only open half a year later, he had been sighing about how useless it was. He never imagined that today would come. Perhaps this was the mysteries of the world. It was impossible to predict. You would never know what would happen in the future. 5 days later, the auction took place as scheduled. As the master of the Dao Arena, Kong Mingqiao was naturally invited. However, Qin Yu didn't follow him. Instead, he put on a black robe and directly entered the auction house. But it was clear that his heroic actions had won the respect of the auction house. His seat was arranged near the front. The wide sofa was incomparably comfortable. Qin Yu leaned back and closed his eyes in meditation. An hour later, the surrounding noise quieted down. A silver-haired auctioneer stepped onto the round stage. He smiled and greeted everyone. Then he clapped his hands and said, "Lights out." Immediately, in the giant auction house, there were only 3 crystal lamps left above the round stage. The bright light gathered on the round stage, making it particularly eye-catching. The well-dressed auctioneer didn't waste any time and went straight to the main topic. The first auction item, as usual, is always a good item. It will arouse everyone's interest, and our auction house will earn more commission. The audience roared with laughter. The next auction item was indeed quite good. It was a treasure found in an ancient ruin. Although it was a bit damaged, it was still extremely powerful. Many cultivators began to bid. The atmosphere in the auction house soon heated up. One by one, the auction items were placed on the round platform. After the competition, they found their new owners. Time passed quietly during this process. The auction house used a mixed method of bidding. Many common and common treasures were placed among the more precious items in order to sell for the highest price. Auction item number 137 was only sent onto the stage for hours after the auction began. The auctioneer smiled. He looked at the dark, withered branch placed on the crystal plate, his eyes filled with praise. Before the auction begins, there is something I must tell everyone so that we can better estimate its value and avoid missing out on a treasure. He paused for a moment and continued to say, 2 days ago, my auction house received an honored guest. Although he hid his identity, I can confirm that he is an extremely honored existence. This mysterious honored guest put forth an extremely exaggerated price in order to purchase this withered branch with unknown attributes and unknown effects ahead of time. But in the end, upholding the principles of fairness and justice, we refused this honored guest and chose to place it in the auction house so that all guests can have a chance to compete for it. The unknown isn't necessarily useless. Perhaps beneath its ordinary surface lies a beauty and magnificence that you and I cannot even imagine. This mysterious, withered branch is black under the light and bright under the darkness. The starting bid for this item is 80,000 spirit stones, and each increase must be no less than 1,000 spirit stones. Let the auction begin. One couldn't help but admit that this auctioneer had an extremely powerful ability to bewitch people. Many guests who weren't interested in auction item number 137 now had their eyes light up. The auction house's reputation had always been excellent, and they wouldn't make things up. Since someone said that they were willing to spend a large amount of money to buy it before the auction, then it must be true. 80,000 spirit stones wasn't a small amount. But to those who had the qualifications to enter the auction house, it wasn't anything at all. They could just treat it as an interesting attempt. 80,000 spirit stones! The one who spoke was a female cultivator ranked near the front of the individual guests. Her face was still filled with childishness, and there was still some baby fat on her cheeks. Her eyes were bright and lively. Although she didn't display an overbearing attitude, she still revealed a natural grace and elegance. It was clear that her status wasn't ordinary. Of course, if you couldn't see this, the two burly men sitting on her left and right were obviously her guards. Their cold gazes and auras were also the best evidence. But, as mentioned before, those who had the qualifications to participate in the auction today were all wealthy people, and those who were wealthy usually had a high status. Even if this female cultivator came from an extraordinary background, she couldn't frighten everyone. 100,000. The one who spoke was also a female cultivator. However, she was seated in a VIP box that had been specially set up for them. The childish female cultivator puffed up her cheeks and said, 200,000. I want this branch. You want it. What do you want? I'm not a man, and even if I were, I still wouldn't be able to stand your bold and unrestrained style. For this thing, I'll bid 300,000. The voice in the private room contained a hint of laughter, and a hint of flirtatiousness flowed out. Such a bold conversation, in particular, caused many men to secretly swallow their saliva. The childish female cultivator's face flushed red. She opened her mouth to retort, but no words came out. She nearly cried out in anxiety. The eyes of the two guards beside her flashed with an ominous light. They were about to stand up, but at this time they coughed and shock filled their eyes. They looked at the box again and revealed a deep sense of dread. One of the guards lowered his head and said something in a low voice. The childish female cultivator bit her lips and said, 500,000. Bright laughter sounded out, filled with elegance and elegance. Two beauties, there is no need to damage your friendship over a mere withered branch. How about this young master by it? He paused for a moment and then quoted a price, 600,000. The auction house was silent. Many people stared at these three people, their eyes strange. Although this withered branch was a bit strange, 600,000 spirit stones wasn't a small amount of money. It wasn't worth it just to satisfy one's own curiosity. As for the last young master who bid 600,000 spirit stones, his goal clearly wasn't the withered branch itself. His goal was to attract the attention of two young women, to spend a fortune for the sake of beauty. This sort of thing wasn't anything new in the auction house. Most of the people who did this were young masters with rich backgrounds. But today, the number of young masters in the auction house was unexpectedly high. Another voice sounded out from the VIP box. Brother Zhang, how can a mere 600,000 spirit stones be enough to obtain the treasure that two beauties are fighting over? How about I round it up to 1,000,000? It's just 1,000,000 spirit stones. How clever can it be? A third young master joined in. 2,000,000. I'm just playing with double the price. How heroic! Beneath his black robes, Qin Yu's complexion darkened. The sudden appearance of jealousy had ruined his plans. He originally thought that it would be best to not draw attention to himself and bid for the pre-celestial wood. In order to appear as natural as possible, he had already bid twice and obtained 2 small items at a moderate price. But no matter how good his plan was, in the face of a group of young masters competing with each other, his plans were torn to shreds. He couldn't help but look at the childish female cultivator in the front row. Although he knew he couldn't blame her if it weren't for this little girl speaking up, there wouldn't have been such twists and turns. Today, it was hard not to attract attention. From the half-closed window of the VIP box, an extremely beautiful face appeared. She covered her mouth and giggled, her eyes seeming to hide countless little hooks. Young masters giving me face like this makes me feel uneasy. I like this item, but what should I do? Haha. Simple. This young master will bid for it and gift it to Miss Zhou. A fourth young master brazenly said, For a million, double the price. I've played this sort of game since I was young, and I've never tasted defeat. Domineering to the max. Qin Yu cursed this person inwardly. Indeed, with him stepping forward, the three young masters in front were immediately enraged. Doubling the price is such a vulgar thing, and yet you can say it in such a righteous manner. How strange! This young master suddenly changed the topic and smiled. 5 million spirit stones. Miss Mu, I will bid for this item and gift it to you. The young female cultivator's cheeks flushed red, and she looked incomparably shy. She turned and glanced at the box from which the voice came. Her shy and timid appearance made one's heart itch. How was this unbearably shy? This was clearly a little seductress that had reached the point of perfection. It was just that while Miss Zhou was bright and beautiful, the truth was that their hearts were the same. These two seductresses must have done this on purpose today. It's fine if you want to argue, but why do you have to choose what I want? Qin Yu's eyes were icy cold. If looks could kill, then these two seductresses and a flock of peacocks in heat would have already been torn to pieces. As Qin Yu was thinking of murderous thoughts, the price of the pre-celestial would continue to rise. In the blink of an eye, it broke past 10 million. To these young masters, spirit stones weren't anything at all. Moreover, in today's situation, who would be willing to lower their heads in front of others? Qin Yu took a deep breath and suppressed the hostility in his heart. He coldly watched them compete. Now wasn't a good time to make a move. These young masters cared about face the most. It wouldn't be too late to wait until they finished killing each other and then fight for it. This was because, at that time, he would only need to face a single person. Everyone was left dumbfounded. They watched helplessly on as the price of some unknown withered tree branch began to soar. Even those that were originally interested in it completely suppressed their thoughts. This bunch of bastard young masters were trying to show off. Anyone who dared to compete with them was an idiot. 88 million spirit stones. The one who liked to double the price bid with a heroic spirit. The entire auction house fell silent. At this time, if he dared to continue doubling the price, it was clear just how confident he was. The three young masters that were competing fell silent. Although they wanted to take advantage of this chance to obtain more attention from these beauties, nearly 100 million spirit stones wasn't a sum they could casually use. Even for them, nearly 100 million spirit stones wasn't a sum they could casually use. Moreover, today was more of an opportunity to get to know Zhou Fenghuang and Mu Qingwan and to express their intentions. If he really wanted to marry these two seductresses, he would have to rely on his performance at the Demon Ascension Gate and the efforts of his family. The Sun family is truly worthy of being called rich enough to rival a nation. This brother here admires you greatly. This withered tree branch is yours. When it comes to spirit stones, I truly cannot compare with Brother Sunday. I only hope that at the Demon Ascension Gate, Brother Sun can still have today's glory and prestige. I heard that in this Demon Ascension Gate selection, there are many dazzling characters that have appeared. There are even some with tyrannical, demonic bloodlines. Sun Zifu, you absolutely cannot be knocked to the ground and lose the face of us aristocratic juniors. Sun Zifu was the one who claimed to have never tasted defeat in the game of doubling the price. He laughed and said, There is no need for you three brothers to worry about this matter. I am confident that I can smoothly enter the demonic path. But today, I am indebted to you three for giving up your treasures. Tonight, I will arrange a banquet at Drunken Immortal Restaurant. I hope that you three brothers will honor us with your presence. Humph. The three people coughed and didn't speak further. Sun Zifu smiled. He picked up the cup in front of him and drank a mouthful, feeling refreshed from head to toe. Young master, did you spend too much? This old servant knows that my family has plenty of spirit stones, but today is not a proper occasion. Miss Zhou and Miss Mu might not appreciate it. An old servant bowed to the side, a flattering smile on his face. His wrinkled face was like a blooming chrysanthemum. What is an old thing like you know? Today, this young master wants to spend in a tyrannical manner. You should also know that what our Sun family has the most is spirit stones. Do you understand what it means to play to our strengths and avoid our weaknesses? If we want to move these two little monsters, we can only rely on shiny spirit stones. Sun Zifu's eyes flashed with a shrewd light. As for whether or not these two little monsters will acknowledge it, that doesn't matter at all. This is because I didn't do it for them to see. The old man's face was full of praise. Young master is wise and heroic. This old servant cannot compare. As long as this matter spreads to the Zhou and Mu families, we will have shown our sincerity. Hee, young master is young master. Your methods are brilliant. Sun Zifu kicked him. Stop flattering me. Although he said this, there was a bit more of a smile on his face. It was obvious he was enjoying it. On the auction stage, the silver-haired auctioneer was full of smiles. Although the final bid of nearly 100 million spirit stones was high, he had seen many grand scenes and didn't lose his composure. He smiled and said, "Young Master Sun has bid 88 million spirit stones. Is there any other guest who wants to bid? If there isn't, then this magical dead would belongs to young Master Sunday in the box," the old servant proudly shouted. "Hurry up and announce it. Since our young master has bid this price, who dares to compete with us?" A flattering aura flowed in the air. The silver-haired auctioneer's smile didn't change. He nodded and was about to comply, but at this time another young voice sounded. 100 million spirit stones. The auction hall suddenly fell silent. The silver-haired auctioneer directly swallowed the words he was about to say. He pointed a finger and said, "This honored guest has bid 100 million. Everyone, today's first auction item has appeared. Please let us remember this exciting moment. Is there anyone who wants to bid a higher price?" Sun Zifu coldly snorted and his eyes turned fierce. The old man beside him bent down and said, "I will immediately investigate this person's identity. To dare compete with young master, that person has no idea of death or danger. There's no time. Let's take it first." Sun Zifu put down his wine cup and leaned back in his chair. His voice was calm and indifferent. 200 million. Since he said he would double it, he naturally had to double it. 210 million. Another voice spoke up without hesitation. Sun Zifu's lips twitched. 420 million. He clenched his fists and his nails dug into his flesh. This was already the limit of what he could bear. If the other party increased it any further, he would have to give up if he didn't want to slap himself in the face. Bastard. 400 million spirit stones was enough to pile up several mountains. Just which bastard was it that dared to interfere despite knowing that this was the dignified, demonic Path Sun family? This matter wasn't over. Second-generation Sun's eyes flashed with a bloodthirsty light. In the auction house, there was another person who was secretly alarmed. This person was naturally Chinyu, who was preparing to seize the pre-celestial wood. The moment that the bid sounded out, he looked in the darkness and accurately found the bidder. His pupils shrank. Chi Cheng. That's right, it was Chu Taidu's extremely beloved disciple. It was said that after Chu Taidu died, all of his assets had been quietly swallowed up by him. Even so, with Chi Cheng's status and background, there was no reason for him to throw out so many spirit stones at today's auction. Not to mention offending the Sun family. But if he were to attract so much attention, the amount of greed he would attract would be enough for him to drink. But Chi Cheng had acted just like this. In an incomparably tyrannical manner, he had brazenly tossed out a massive amount of spirit stones. The auction house had already sent a cultivator to verify his identity. This was the usual practice of the auction house. Otherwise, if one recklessly bid and couldn't afford it in the end, That would be a great joke and trouble. Looking at the shocked auction house cultivator, as well as the respectful expression on his face after he regained consciousness, the result was obvious. 430 million. Chi-Chung was calm, but his heart was tumbling with tempestuous waves. In the past, he had imagined himself possessing unsurpassed power and wealth, becoming the focus of everyone's attention. Today, his dream had finally come true. Feeling the shock and awe in the eyes of those around him, Chi-Chung felt a great sense of satisfaction. Although he was well aware that there were no benefits to being so high profile, with the immortal sect as his backing, as long as he didn't violate any taboos, no one could harm him. Tonight, he was the center of the world. In the VIP box, Sun Zifu waved his hand and smashed his wine cup. Scarlet wine soaked through the carpet. His face was filled with rage, but he quickly composed himself. Since you want it so much, I'll give it to you. The flattering old man's eyes were cold and gloomy. This old servant will help young master get it back. For 140 million. Another voice suddenly rang out. Sun Zifu looked up, his eyes shaking. After a brief period of silence, the entire auction house was filled with cries of alarm. Chi-Chung himself wasn't considered much, but as Chu Taidu's disciple, his level of friendship wasn't low. In other words, there were many people in the auction house that recognized him. When he first made a bid, he attracted countless eyes, most of them cold and greedy. They were all shocked by the wealth left behind by Chu Taidu. As for Chi-Cheng's actions, they were attributed to him being blinded by wealth and trying to obtain the attention of the Zhou family and Mu family misses. Of course, this was laughable. But now, someone made another bid, overturning this speculation. Perhaps there might be one person stupid enough to spend hundreds of millions of spirit stones to obtain the attention of a beauty, but there wouldn't be two of them appearing at the same time. Chi-Cheng's eyes brightened. He smiled and stood up. Qinyu, you finally made a move. Countless cultivators felt their hearts skip a beat. Their originally inquisitive eyes were now filled with surprise. The black-robed man was silent for several breaths of time. He lifted his hand and pulled off his hood, revealing a calm expression. Chi-Chung, I'm curious. How did you know it was me? Chi-Chung brightly smiled. I'm sorry, but I refuse to answer. Today, I'm going to fight for my teacher's honor. You won't be able to get this branch. Qin Yu took a deep breath. 700 million spirit stones. Chi-Chung crossed his hands behind his back. 800 million. Kong Mingqiao's voice sounded out from the VIP box. Fellow Taoist Qin Yu, if you need, the Tao Arena can lend you a sum of spirit stones. Chi-Chung laughed. Today, no matter how much Qin Yu bids, I will bid 100 million higher than him. Kong Mingqiao sneered. Junior, you are far too arrogant. Chi-Chung bowed. Arena Steward Kong, you can give it a try. The unremarkable Chi-Ching had suddenly risen and seized all of Chu Taidu's family property. Moreover, he hadn't encountered any trouble because of this. Today, he didn't hesitate at all and directly challenged Qin Yu. He didn't even give in to Kong Mingqiao. No one was a fool, especially those rich and powerful people. Looking at the high-spirited and incomparably arrogant Chi-Chung, everyone could see a giant monster behind him. In the private room, Sun Zifu shivered. This matter ends here. Whether it was Qin Yu or Chi-Chung, who had likely been chosen by the immortal sect, they weren't people to be provoked. The old servant's smile was uglier than a cry. It seems there isn't enough time. Before his voice fell, two shadows suddenly shot out from the shadows of the auction stage. Cold lights shot towards Chi-Chung. Bang! A tyrannical aura erupted from beside Chi-Chung. Before this thin old man with cloudy eyes attacked, his existence was as weak as air. But as soon as he attacked, he was like a blazing sun, his tyrannical aura sweeping out in all directions. The two cold lights trembled and collapsed. They continued to spread upwards, directly shattering the two assassins. A strange strength acted upon every piece of flesh and bone. grinding them to powder. In just a breath of time, the two living assassins had completely vanished. The thin, old man slowly sat down. The wild aura around him converged, and he returned to his ordinary appearance. But now, no one dared to underestimate him in the least. This was a super powerhouse at the 8th level of the Blue Sea Realm. Even in the entire land of divinity and demons, he was an existence that could dominate a region. But now he was willing to stay behind Qi Cheng, becoming an unremarkable backdrop. This was enough to verify everyone's speculations. Sun Zifu let out a long breath of relief. It was good that he died. Although it wasn't easy for the family to raise Deathsworn, being able to avoid a great deal of trouble was already the best result. He ruthlessly glared at the old servant. "I'll bury this matter in my stomach and pretend it never happened." Qi Cheng's smile became increasingly calm. "It looks like some people have developed killing intent towards me, but that doesn't matter. If they want to kill me, then feel free to do so." He looked up, his eyes cold. "But today, let's finish the auction first. Qinyu, are you going to increase the price or not? Otherwise, this mystical deadwood will belong to me." Qinyu took a deep breath and turned to leave. He knew that Qi Cheng wanted to force him to make a move. Although it was true that Qi Cheng wanted to smash apart his face, this was what Qi Cheng was looking forward to. Why did the immortal sect not hesitate to pay any price to prevent him from obtaining the pre-celestial wood? Was it purely out of hostility towards him? Or had they sensed something? Qin Yu's heart shrank. He began to think about whether or not he had been too careless. But there was clearly only a single copy of the monster raising mystic art, and no one in this world should know anything about the soul-summoning bell. Qin Yu took a deep breath and suppressed these thoughts. With things having come to this point, there was no longer any meaning in thinking about these things. The pre-celestial wood was in Qi Cheng's hands. He couldn't do anything in the auction house, but after he left, that didn't mean he couldn't make a plan. However, if he could think of something, the immortal sect would also be able to. Qi Cheng was bait, luring him to attack first. Once Qin Yu attacked, he would lose the protection of the Dao Arena Master. What should he do? Should he give up, or should he take a risk? At this time, a thought fluctuation spread into his mind. "I originally thought you knew, but it seems you really don't. If you have time, come here as soon as possible." The one who transmitted this thought was the little blue lamp. Qin Yu's heart skipped a beat. He felt that there was some important information in these words, but the little blue lamp didn't respond. After entering the Dao Arena, Qin Yu closed the doors to the training room and sat down cross-legged. His divine sense passed through the sealed dimension ring and descended into the distant small world. The star-cutting grass excitedly danced in the air, tearing open holes in space. As it saw Qin Yu's distressed appearance, it calmed down and lifted him into the medicine field. Soon, the star-cutting grass came to a stop. A spirit plant bathed in darkness appeared in front of Qin Yu. It had 2 extremely beautiful branches. Even in the pitch-black darkness of the night, it couldn't conceal its dazzling colors and beautiful textures that seemed as if they were fantastical and beautiful. Qin Yu's eyes widened. This is pre-celestial wood. The little blue lamp's thought fluctuation spread out. "Several months ago, you tossed in a root. Do you remember?" Qin Yu's complexion was strange. That's right, that root was the spirit root of a pre-celestial wood. At this moment, Qin Yu's heart surged with excitement. He felt 120% gratitude towards the deceased Chu Taidu. He really was a good person. Wait, 2 pre-celestial wood. Chapter 466. The plain-looking Nether Domain Master smiled warmly. He cupped his hands together and bowed. "Fellow Taoist Westgate, I apologize for today, but my immortal sect has won." Solitary Westgate had discovered the pre-celestial wood and used Kong Mingqiao to inform Qin Yu. The immortal sect could also send a representative to snipe him. This was considered a normal battle. Victory or defeat depended on their own methods, and no one could say anything. Humph! The immortal sect is rich and overbearing. I am naturally inferior to you, but the junior you chose is far too rampant. Does he even place me or the Tao arena in his eyes? Solitary Westgate's complexion was grim. The Nether Domain Master's smile became even brighter. This junior has just grasped power and wealth, and his ego is inflated. With fellow Taoist Westgate status, there is no need to lower yourself to his level. He lifted a hand and tore open space. Looking through the crack, one could see a complete spirit stone vein within. I inadvertently obtained this spirit stone vein. Today, I will gift it to fellow Taoist Westgate as an apology on behalf of Qi Cheng. Solitary Westgate lifted a hand, and the spirit stone vein rumbled as it flew up. It rapidly shrank and submerged into his hand. With a cold snort, he vanished from sight. The Nether Domain Master revealed a gloomy expression. After several breaths of time, his body shattered, turning into motes of starlight that scattered away. Immortal sect. The Nether Domain Master's true body opened his eyes. Something is wrong. The Buddhist nation's sovereign's voice was faint. Of course not. Just how difficult is it for the soul summoning bell to recognize a master? It is suppressed and rejected by the world. Yet a junior like Qin you managed to encounter the pre-celestial would. If it weren't for us interfering, he might have already completed the process. The Nether Domain Master's face was cloudy and uncertain. Could this be the will of the heavens? Even the will of the world itself cannot obstruct it. Humph! There is no such thing as the will of the heavens in this world. Everything has to be fought for by oneself. You and I have cultivated to this point, and yet you still can't see through this? The Buddhist nation sovereign's eyes were cold. Taking 10,000 steps back, even if Qinyu is the will of the heavens, I will still knock him into the dust. I must obtain the soul summoning bell. The Nether Domain Master sighed. Unfortunately, Qinyu wasn't fooled. If he had attacked Qi Cheng, things would have been much simpler. The Buddhist nation's sovereign lightly said, Qinyu is not a fool of his generation. Otherwise, how could he have his current achievements? Whether it is the ancient perishment decree or the sea-breaking Sea King bead, both are more than enough to prove how outstanding he is. If it's possible, I'm willing to spare his life and guide his soul to the Buddhist kingdom so that he can become my servant. The Nether Domain Master shook his head. It is too early to say such things. As long as Qinyu stays in Four Seasons City, there is nothing you or I can do to him. He continued to say, when I led the Tao Arena Master to attack just now, even though he hit his aura, I could still feel that solitary Westgate has become much stronger. The Buddhist nation's sovereign's voice was cold. So what? If he obstructs me from obtaining the soul summoning bell, I will not hesitate to fight him. The Nether Domain Master revealed a worried expression. But at this time his eyes flashed, and he looked up at the void in front of him. Space rippled, and a black-robed phantom appeared. In Four Seasons City, another pre-celestial would has appeared. What? The Nether Domain Master shouted out loud. If mentioning the will of heaven just now was only a momentary sigh, then right now there was an incomparably intense feeling of déjà vu, something like the pre-celestial would had basically vanished from the world. Even in the immortal sect, there wasn't a single one of them left. But in a tiny Four Seasons city, two had appeared in succession in such a short period of time. To say that this had nothing to do with Qinyu was a bit too far-fetched. The Buddhist nation sovereign clenched his teeth, slowly squeezing out each word. Seize the pre-celestial wood at all costs. I want to see whether or not the so-called will of heaven can be broken. Good. The black-robed phantom dissipated. Whoosh! The Buddhist nation sovereign stood up. I will personally make a trip. The Nether Domain Master frowned. Solitary Westgate is there. If you descend, I fear there will be a conflict. The Buddhist nation, sovereign, shook his head. You don't understand. Ever since I learned of the existence of the soul summoning bell, there has been a faint connection between me and this treasure. The Nether Domain Master hesitated for a moment. I will go with you. Good. Schwa. Schwa. The two of them vanished at the same time. Time was pushed back 2 hours. Four Seasons City, Tao Arena's training room. Qin Yu summoned Undying and handed him a jade box. With your methods, it should be easy for you to hide your aura and not be detected by others. Bring this item to the entrance of the auction house, and I will be there soon. As for the rest, you can act as you see fit. Undying opened the jade box. After a single glance, he fell silent. After several breaths of time without a single word, he cupped his hands together and left. Looking at his departing back, Qin Yu couldn't help but frown. He felt as if this fellow had become different from before. Today might be the greatest chance in his life to make a fortune. He couldn't afford to mess up his plans. In truth, Qin Yu was worrying too much. The current Undying was far more reliable than he had ever been in his life. The will of heaven. Damn it, I thought this was just a joke, but I never thought it would actually exist. I'm also lucky enough to encounter it. Undying muttered to himself. Great waves tumbled in his heart. After a long time, he clenched his teeth and roared out, I'll risk it. I'll make a bet. Qin Yu, you must not disappoint me. Once he made his decision, he felt his entire body relax. Undying's footsteps quickened. Kong Mingqiao stopped in the distance. He looked at the black-robed figure walking out of the training room. At first he didn't care, but soon he frowned and his eyes became dignified. After looking for a bit longer, his dignified expression became a bit more bewildered. He actually couldn't see through this person's aura. It had to be known that this was the Tao Arena. As the master of this Tao Arena, he had the support of the entire Tao Arena. Here, he could even fight a supreme being. But he actually couldn't see through this person's depths. This person either had an extremely powerful aura-concealing treasure on him, or his boundary was far above his own. Kong Mingqiao's mind tumbled endlessly. Why was there such a mysterious character in Qin Yu's training room? Before he could think too much about it, Qin Yu pushed open the training room's doors. As he saw Kong Mingqiao, he happily walked over. Arena Steward Kong, has the auction ended? Kong Mingqiao subconsciously said, Not yet. I left early to see you. Qin Yu smiled. That's good. I have a matter that I need Arena Steward Kang's help with. Kong Mingqiao nodded. Speak. In his mind, he was still thinking about the black-robed person that just left. He wanted to ask, but he was afraid that Qin Yu wouldn't like it, so he hesitated. Qin Yu said, I want to borrow spirit stones. No problem. Borrow spirit stones? Kong Mingqiao regained his composure. The item has already been won by Qi Qing. Isn't it too late for fellow Taoist Qin Yu to gather spirit stones now? Qin Yu shook his head. It's not too late. It's just right. Kong Mingqiao didn't know what was going on. Seeing Qin Yu's confident smile, he hesitated for a moment and said, All right. May I ask how much fellow Taoist Qin you would like to borrow? Qin Yu coughed. As much as you have. Kong Mingqiao, auction house. Qi Cheng brazenly took action, suppressing the young masters of the Zhao, Qian, Sun, and Li families, forcing back the illustrious Qin Yu. Then he used 800 million spirit stones to obtain the mysterious withered branch, immediately becoming the focus of everyone's attention. After guessing his current status, the covetous looks in everyone's eyes faded away. All that was left over was awe and flattery. Even the high and lofty young ladies of the Zhou and Mu families couldn't help but glance at Qi Cheng, allowing his vanity to obtain the greatest satisfaction. Although Qi Qing didn't bid again in the following auctions, he was still the most eye-catching person in the entire audience. When the last item was auctioned off, Qi Qing was submerged in a tide of people. Countless flattering voices sounded out, causing him to smile. Many people that he could only look up to and carefully receive in the past were now smiling so brightly. So what if he was someone from the immortal sect? Even if the demonic path knew, as long as Chi-Ching didn't violate any taboos, they would pretend they didn't see him. This was an unspoken rule that both sides had to abide by. Otherwise, the world would have already fallen into chaos. It took a great deal of effort for the auction house cultivator to squeeze his way through the crowd and respectfully offer a metal box to Chi-Cheng with both hands. After a brief examination, Chi-Cheng put it into his ring of holding, and then took out a transparent crystalline spirit stone card. On the surface of the crystal card was a vivid and lifelike demon phantom. Its eyes seemed to flow with magma. This was issued by the demonic path and was the world's most precious and top spirit stone card. Each card had at least 1 billion spirit stones and was something that only almighty beings could possess. Chi-Cheng casually took it out. His appearance could be said to be bursting with arrogance. Everyone's eyes turned towards him. The skinny old man's head was lowered and his hands hung at his sides. He quietly stood beside Chinyu without the slightest bit of aura. When this card appeared, he looked up and swept his eyes around. It was like a bucket of cold water had been poured over their heads, causing everyone to shiver and their consciousness to sober up. Chi-Cheng smiled. There is no need to be nervous. I believe that all of you fellow Taoists here won't have any other thoughts towards me because of a mere spirit stone. He cupped his hands together. Everyone, I still have important matters to attend to today. When I have some free time in the future, I will hold a banquet to invite everyone. I hope that everyone will come. His words immediately drew a response. Several charming female cultivators had watery eyes that were so sweet that they could drown a person to death. It was clear that as long as Chi-Cheng wanted to, all he needed to do was beckon his finger and they would climb onto his bed without hesitation. Ha 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 ha. With a carefree laugh, Chi-Ching put away the spirit stone card. The cultivators of the auction house respectfully bowed to him and then walked out. A group of people crowded around him. Countless awe filled their eyes. It was an awe-inspiring sight. Outside the entrance of the auction house, it was a rare day of good weather. Bright sunlight sprinkled down from above. As Chi-Cheng walked out, he subconsciously narrowed his eyes. Then he was attracted by a striking darkness not too far away. Wonderwood, wonderwood, freshly cut wonderwood. The stubble is still wet. Everyone, don't miss this chance. The coarse cries were extremely grating to the ears in the crowd. This grating also meant that people were paying attention to his stall. At this time, there was already a circle of cultivators surrounding his stall. Every time there was a large-scale auction, many cultivators would set up stalls and wait outside. They hoped that their treasures would catch the eye of some noble person and be sold for a good price. This could be considered a common custom. What? You ask me what's so magical about this wood? Please open your eyes wide. If this wood is placed under light, it will be bathed in a curtain of darkness. If it is bathed in darkness, it will automatically release light. Look again. These beautiful and brilliant colors. These patterns that leave one mesmerized. This is simply a natural work of art. As Chi-Cheng heard this, his smile stiffened. The flattering voices around him had already vanished. As everyone walked out from the auction house, their complexions became incomparably strange. Not too long ago, they had just witnessed a fierce competition between several young masters who were jealous of each other. In the end, this had led to a sky-high price, but none of this was important. What was important was that the withered branch that Chi-Ching had just won seemed to have attributes that were similar to what the seller had described. Suddenly, an excited voice echoed out from the crowd. I want this piece of wood. Chi-Ching's eyes widened. This voice. Chinyu. He pushed away the charming female cultivator that was trying to burrow into his body. Then he shot forwards like an arrow. The skinny old man reacted even faster. Like a shadow, he instantly crossed space. As for those that blocked his path, they were sent flying in all directions. Hold on. I am also interested in this piece of wood. Looking at Qin Yu's panicked, angry, and resentful eyes, Qi Cheng felt a great satisfaction in his heart. So what if you are a peerless, proud son of heaven, recognized by the world? Today, you will still be trampled beneath my feet, and twice at that. Qi Cheng, don't go too far. Qin Yu roared out in a low voice. Qi Cheng brightly smiled. I am bullying you. This piece of wood is right here. If you want it, just make a bid. He turned and looked at the black-robed stall owner. He lightly said, no matter how high the bid is, I will give you more spirit stones. This piece of wood is mine. As everyone walked out from the auction house, they looked at Qin Yu with sympathy in their eyes. To be smashed to such a state with spirit stones. He must have been aggrieved to death, right? But just what was this piece of wood? If both Qin Yu and Qi Cheng wanted it, then it definitely wasn't simple. Pre-celestial wood. From the crowd, someone suddenly cried out in alarm. That person's eyes widened with excitement. That's right, it is this strange object. I only happened to read about it in an ancient book. I never thought I would have the chance to see it again in my life. Not many people knew what pre-celestial wood was, but most of the people here knew that Qin Yu had been searching for this object for the past several months. Moreover, in these last 2 months, he had raised the bid higher and higher, but in the end he hadn't found anything. Qi Cheng faintly smiled. Facing everyone's eyes, he flipped his hand and took out a silver metal box. After opening it, a withered branch was revealed. He took it out and exerted a bit of force. With a cracking sound, the black layer of carbon on the branch broke apart and fell to the ground, revealing its true appearance. A circle of darkness rippled out, submerging Qi Cheng's hand. The dazzling colors and the exquisite and mystical textures were exactly the same as the wood on the stall. That's right, this is pre-celestial wood. Qi Cheng smiled and looked up. Qin Yu, you really want it, right? But I won't give it to you. Do you feel uncomfortable? Haha, but right now I feel extremely happy, unprecedentedly happy. Qin Yu's face flushed red and his body shivered. One could see blue veins sticking out on his neck. It was clear he was on the verge of exploding. Qi Cheng's eyes narrowed and he laughed even louder. Are you angry? Hit me. Are you trying to steal it from me? Aren't you fierce? Why don't you dare to attack me? Fellow Taoist Qin Yu, don't be impulsive. Kong Mingqiao said in a low voice, but there wasn't much worry in his eyes. He looked at the black-robed man and then at Qin Yu. Finally, his eyes fell on Qi Cheng, and a strange light flashed in his eyes. Qin Yu closed his eyes and took a deep breath. Arena Steward Kong, I need to borrow some spirit stones from the Tao Arena. The amount will be quite large. I wonder if you can agree? Kong Mingqiao didn't hesitate. Fellow Taoist Qin Yu is the Tao Arena's most important guest. Borrowing spirit stones is no problem at all. Good. Qin Yu roared. Qi Cheng, let me see just how many spirit stones your master is willing to throw at a dog. Qi Cheng's lips curled up. A dog is good. If it's obedient, it will have meat to eat. It's better than being chased to the ends of the earth and finally being slaughtered. He licked his lips. Qin Yu, perhaps if you die, I might even be able to get a piece of meat on your bone. Qin Yu clenched his teeth. 1 billion spirit stones. Give me the pre-celestial wood. The stall owner was clearly frightened silly by the scene in front of him. As he heard these words, he shivered. His eyes brightened and he nearly jumped up from the ground. What are you panicking for? You want to take away the pre-celestial wood with a mere 1 billion spirit stones? Dream on. Qi Cheng lightly said. 1, 5 billion. 2 billion. Qin Yu's eyes turned red. He didn't hesitate at all. 2, 5 billion. Qin Yu roared. 3 billion. At this time, regardless of whether they were ordinary or noble, everyone was scared silly. They had seen many people with many spirit stones, but they had never seen someone who treated spirit stones like child's play. 3 billion spirit stones. Even if they were extremely wealthy, for a mere stock of spirit would, well, even the incomparably precious pre-celestial wood wasn't worth this price. They were insane. These two madmen. The stall owner was clearly scared silly. He instinctively held onto the pre-celestial wood in his arms, wild joy and fear interweaving in his eyes. He clearly knew that although the bidding price was terrifying, he still didn't have the life to spend such a massive amount of wealth, even if he could obtain it. But this was how people were. Even though they were clearly terrified, their greed and desire were still driving them. They stared at these two people, hoping that they could put forth a higher bid. Chi Chung paused. He suddenly said, "Anyone can speak empty words. Since this is a bidding war, you naturally have to put forth enough chips." He flipped his hand, and 4 crystal demon spirit stone cards appeared in his palm. "Here are our 4 billion spirit stones. Qin Yu, do you still dare to increase the price?" Qin Yu's body shivered. He pinched his thigh to maintain a pained expression of grief and indignation. He took a deep breath and turned to look at Kong Mingqiao. Arena Steward Kong looked at him and then at the unassailable, black-robed man on the ground. He observed 3 seconds of silence for the high-spirited Chi Cheng. He hesitated for a moment and then said, "With my status as the steward of Four Seasons City's Dao Arena, I can vouch for fellow Taoist Qin Yu that his bid is true and valid." Chi Cheng laughed. Arena Steward Kong indeed has the qualifications to vouch for him, but I wonder how many spirit stones a Dao Arena branch division can take out? Kong Mingqiao sneered. "Humph, more than you think." Chi Cheng turned around. "I don't have enough spirit stones." The skinny old man didn't say a word. He flipped his hands, and 2 stacks of crystal cards appeared in the demonic light. Each one was a demon crystal card of the highest grade. Gudong! Several cultivators found it hard to breathe. Their eyes rolled back and they fell to the ground. But no one laughed at them, because everyone's field of vision had turned black and their hearts felt as if they were being grasped by invisible hands. Just how many spirit stones was this? Although everyone knew that the immortal sect had stood tall in the world for endless years, and their background was bound to be astonishing, this heroic spirit was still hard to bear. Chi Chung flicked his sleeves, and the spirit stone cards in the skinny old man's hands fell to the ground. "Give me the pre-celestial wood, and all these spirit stones will be yours." He looked up, a taunting look in his eyes. "Of course, Qin Yu, you can continue to increase the price. I don't care if you use spirit stones to ruthlessly step on me beneath your feet. You." Qin Yu's face flushed red. He glared at Chi Cheng. "Haha, Qin Yu, it looks like this pre-celestial wood will belong to me." Chi Cheng sneered. "Now, you can give me the pre-celestial wood." The stall owner's fingers trembled as he handed over the pre-celestial wood. Then, with lightning speed, he picked up all the spirit stone cards on the ground and rushed out of the crowd. His movements were fast, but with such a massive pile of spirit stone cards and nearly 10 billion spirit stones in wealth, it was enough to cause countless cultivators to turn red with greed and take risks. Quietly, over a dozen figures chased after the stall owner. There were bound to be more hidden. Chi Cheng's smile was warm, because he knew that there were definitely people from the immortal sect among them. Spirit stones were good things, but if one didn't know when to retreat and took something they shouldn't take, then all that awaited them was death. Chi Chung played with the pre-celestial wood in his hands. He looked at Qin Yu and said, "Qin Yu, perhaps you can try begging me. Perhaps my heart will soften, and I'll give you a piece of pre-celestial wood. After all, I have 2 right now, and I can't use them all." Qin Yu remained calm as he heard this. He even revealed a smile, a completely different expression from just now. As this expression fell into Chi Cheng's eyes, his heart skipped a beat. He immediately cursed Qin Yu for trying to play tricks on him. The calmer he appeared, the angrier he would be in his heart. "Chi Cheng, do you think that my calmness right now is just an act and that I am actually very, very angry and want to tear you to pieces?" But I'm sorry, I really am not angry right now. On the contrary, I am very happy. Qin Yu paused for a moment and then suddenly said, "You and your honorable master are both good people, really." After he finished speaking, he smiled. Then he left behind the dumbfounded Qi Cheng, who had been given the good guy card. Kong Mingqiao looked at Qi Cheng with a strange expression. He shook his head and said, "I hope that your master will be a bit more benevolent towards you." Qi Cheng's complexion paled. His intuition told him that something was wrong, but as he looked at the 2 pieces of pre-celestial wood in his hands, he took a deep breath and suppressed all his thoughts. Humph! What a crafty plot! Did Qin Yu want to mess up his plans and play some more tricks? It was useless. As long as he could stop Qin Yu from obtaining the pre-celestial wood, then no matter what price he had to pay, he would only be rewarded with merit. Moreover, the immortal sect had paid 10 billion spirit stones. Would such a massive amount of wealth really be obtained by others? He feared that whoever had any thoughts towards these spirit stones would die. A black-robed vendor rushed into an alley. He turned his head and sneered inexplicably. Then he melted into the shadows of a wall and vanished from sight. Whoosh, whoosh. 2 cultivators broke through the air and landed where the black-robed vendor had vanished. They swept their eyes around in alarm and anger, but no matter how they searched, they couldn't find any traces of him. It was as if he had vanished into thin air. Suddenly, an icy cold voice sounded out from behind the 2. "Where are the spirit stones? Hand them over." The 2 cultivators turned around to see a man with thick arms and callous eyes step towards them. Contrary to his tall and sturdy figure, this person didn't make the slightest sound as he walked. Their pupils shrank. The 2 cultivators who walked in the darkness all year round felt an intense threat coming from this person's body. They turned and fled without hesitation. Their speed was fast, but compared to the fist behind them, they were far too slow. Or perhaps this man had predicted their trajectory. When the fist fell, it was impossible for the 2 cultivators to dodge. 2 muffled sounds echoed together. Large holes appeared in the chests of the 2 cultivators that had fled in different directions. Their corpses fell to the ground, their eyes still filled with horror. The callous man looked over the 2 corpses, but didn't find anything. He couldn't help but frown. At this time his complexion changed. He stepped forwards, and the ground suddenly collapsed. Countless cracks spread outwards like a spider web. At the same time, a peerlessly tyrannical aura erupted from his body. Chapter 467. Dao Arena. Kong Mingqiao clearly knew something, but he was smart enough not to ask. It wasn't easy to take advantage of the immortal sect, so it was best to be happy after obtaining benefits. As Arena's steward, Kong thought about how the lofty and overbearing immortal sect had suffered such a loss at Qin Yu's hands. He couldn't help but smile. That idiot Qi Sheng, he was probably still feeling smug after hurrying over spirit stones to Qin Yu, right? After sending Kong Mingqiao away, Qin Yu sat in the courtyard of the training room. He frowned, a dignified look in his eyes. Even if Undying had mysterious abilities, he was still facing the immortal sect. He hoped that nothing would happen to him because of a momentary thought. He was indeed too young. Even though he had experienced so much, he still couldn't restrain his temper. After being provoked by the immortal sect several times, he couldn't help but want to retaliate. So what if he obtained 10 billion spirit stones? To the immortal sect, it wouldn't even tickle them. At this moment, Qin Yu regretted his impulsive actions. After obtaining the pre-celestial wood, he could have just directly constructed the soul-leading altar. Why did he have to complicate matters? Suddenly, the shadow beneath his feet wriggled. Qin Yu was overjoyed. He saw Undying's figure stretch out. He casually tore off his black robes and offered up his storage ring with both hands. "Little master, the spirit stone cards are all here." Sensing the worry that still lingered on Qin Yu's face, the last bit of hesitation in his heart quietly faded away. Did you encounter anyone from the immortal sect? He was a master, so I killed him to help little master vent his anger. Qin Yu's eyebrows arched up. You don't seem right. Undying smiled. Isn't it good to be loyal? Let me remind you, little master, you don't have much time left. Are you sure you want to chat with me here? As he spoke, he took a step back and melted back into the shadow. Qin Yu shook his head, suppressing these thoughts. Now really wasn't the time to investigate these things. The black stone mountain had been trembling for the past 2 days, and undying monster ancestors could awaken at any moment. He didn't hope that after he gathered all the soul treasures, he would be delayed by his thoughts and cause all his efforts to go to waste. He turned and walked away. After several flashes, Qin Yu appeared in an extremely wide courtyard. The black stone mountain floated in the air, and the purple-back blue-wing ants were slumbering beneath it. One could clearly see ripples appearing on the surface of the black stone mountain, as if pebbles were falling into it. Qin Yu's eyes became dignified. With a flick of his sleeves, he sat down cross-legged and closed his eyes. In his mind, all the steps for the soul-summoning bell to recognize a master appeared. Even though he had studied it many times, this matter was too important. He only had one chance, and he couldn't afford to be careless or make any mistakes. After going through everything in his mind one last time and making sure he hadn't missed anything, Qin Yu's eyes flashed open. There was a flash of light, and 36 different soul treasures appeared. The first step of the soul-summoning bell's recognition was to build the soul-guiding altar. 100 miles outside Four Seasons City, atop a low mountain, space seemed to collapse and distort, forming a temporarily isolated space. The Buddhist nation sovereign and Nether Domain master stood with their hands crossed behind their backs. Their eyes fell on the distant Four Seasons City. Because of the distortion in space, this great city was a bit blurry in their line of sight. However, at this moment, both of them had serious expressions on their faces. For Season City, which was nothing special in the eyes of others, was like a blazing flame in the eyes of these two people. It was wantonly spreading its own fire and heat, causing the heavens and earth to tremble. He is truly formidable. The Buddhist nation sovereign sighed with emotion. He was originally someone who should have died, and his destiny and aura should have been weak. So, how did he suddenly transform from a carp into a dragon and achieve the momentum to soar into the highest heavens? The Nether Domain master had a solemn expression. It isn't just you and me who are puzzled by this question. Think about the demonic path's blue sky yellow springs. They used a supreme treasure and the power of samsara to make deductions, but in the end they came up empty-handed. The Buddhist nation sovereign nodded, but there was no fear in his eyes. Rather, there was a burning heat in them. Black-robed, you have walked through Four Seasons City for many days, so you should be able to clearly feel what is happening. What is your evaluation of solitary Westgate's current strength? Behind the two, the black-robed man lowered his head. He hesitated for a moment and then said, "This subordinate cannot evaluate." He paused for a moment and then continued to say, "Because from start to finish, this subordinate has never been able to truly feel the aura of the Tao Arena Master. If this subordinate were to say that he is unfathomably deep, then that would be the most appropriate." Unfathomably deep. The Nether Domain Master sighed. In this world, perhaps the only one that can be called unfathomably deep in front of you and me is him. The Buddhist nation sovereign smiled. Only like this can life have meaning. Otherwise, if you look at the world and bow down before you, even if you live for 1 trillion years, you will only feel lonely. These words were pleasant to hear, but only he knew what he was truly thinking in his heart. The Nether Domain master smiled, not saying anything more. At this time, the black-robed man suddenly looked up. His eyes flashed with surprise like lightning. "Two lords, one of my assistants in Four Seasons City has just perished. If I am not wrong, he should be responsible for recovering the extra spirit stones that the immortal sect paid out." A sharp light burst out from the Buddhist nation's sovereign's eyes. To be called an assistant by the black-robed man, that in itself was a recognition of his strength. Have me investigate just who it was that dared to kill someone from my immortal sect in front of us. He lifted a hand, and a vast map of the territory appeared, rapidly expanding to reveal Four Seasons City. As the Buddhist nation's sovereign flicked his sleeves, the map began to play back. The process of constructing the soul-leading altar proceeded smoothly. When the last bit of pre-celestial wood turned into a stream of light and disappeared into a halo of rainbow light, it suddenly expanded and exploded. The phantom of a magnificent ancient blue altar appeared in the Tao arena. The moment it appeared, an aura spread out and shrouded the entire cultivation room. In the eyes of the outside, everything seemed normal and there wasn't even any change in the aura. But a soul channel leading to a different world had already opened up inside. Qin Yu took a deep breath. Without hesitation, his divine sense held out and fused into the altar. In the next moment, he felt himself being sucked into a channel. Countless motes of light flashed in front of him. After an unknown period of time, the tearing strength that caused his divine sense to ache suddenly vanished. Shwa, a boundless sea of stars appeared in front of Qin Yu. It was magnificent, different from when he first entered the nine-realm Holy Land, as if there was an even greater aura of the vicissitudes of time. Before he could carefully observe it, a dark attractive force arrived from afar, wrapping around his divine sense and sending it howling deep into the sea of stars. Solitary Westgate furrowed his eyebrows. He looked up at the Tao arena and the courtyard that seemed normal. Just now, there was a slight fluctuation in his mind, but when he looked for it again, he couldn't find anything. Was he too nervous? Solitary Westgate shook his head, a helpless smile on his face. But as he looked at the courtyard, there was a bit of anticipation in his eyes. He was an intelligent person at the peak of intelligence. He could naturally sense something unusual from the immortal sect's actions. For instance, the struggle with Qin Yu over the pre-celestial wood. The immortal sect was overbearing, and their strength surpassed all others in the land of divinity and demons. They had always acted in a bold and open manner. Even if they wanted to eliminate Qin Yu as soon as possible, they wouldn't be so petty. Pre-celestial wood, it definitely involved some secret that he didn't know about. The immortal sect should have sensed something and didn't want Qin Yu to succeed. Thus they had no choice but to use such a method. Brat, in this part of the world, there are extremely few people that can make the immortal sect feel such dread. I am increasingly optimistic about you, so don't disappoint me. He couldn't move his divine sense at all. There were several times when he approached some incomparably pitch-black regions in the Starry Sea. Even though he was far away, Qin Yu could still feel a fear that pierced straight into the depths of his soul. He didn't know what this pitch-black region in the Starry Sea was, but there was one thing he was sure of. If his divine sense entered, there would be no chance of leaving. Luckily, although it was a bit thrilling, this enveloping strength allowed him to avoid all true dangers. Moreover, as he went deeper and deeper into the Starry Sea, this strength became increasingly strong. Thus he moved forwards even faster. In the end, it was so fast that Qin Yu couldn't clearly see what was happening outside. He finally understood why this guiding strength would firmly imprison his divine sense. If it weren't for the protection of this strength, his divine sense would have been torn to pieces. He had gone an unknown distance into the Starry Sea, but he still hadn't arrived at his destination. As he thought about the monster-raising mystic art and the world where the souls of nothingness existed, Qin Yu's heart sank. It naturally wasn't simple for a supreme treasure of the heavens and earth to recognize a master. If one had sufficient time and a bit of luck, one could eventually gather 36 kinds of soul materials. But collecting the souls of nothingness was truly a test of one's character and luck. If one was lucky, they might be able to capture the souls of nothingness as soon as they arrived in this different world. But if they were unlucky, being able to escape alive was already a stroke of luck. Moreover, there was only one chance to enter this world. After an unknown period of time, there was a loud humming sound that shook his field of vision. When his divine sense recovered, he discovered that he was in an incomparably vast forest that stretched as far as the eye could see. Countless thick ancient trees were like straight spears that pierced into the skies. Although it was only his divine sense, Qin Yu could clearly feel the terrifyingly rich heaven and earth spiritual strength in this world. Taking in a single breath was comparable to taking in all of the purest spirit stones in the land of divinity and demons. If one were born here, perhaps even a pig could easily become a terrifying great monster. Suddenly, there was a heaven-shaking rumble from the distance. The ground violently shook. Wind started to blow in the air. But soon, Qin Yu discovered that this wasn't wind at all, but the panting of a great beast. Qin Yu believed that his will was firm enough, but his heart still skipped a beat. He never imagined that such a terrifying, great beast would exist in this world. Its body was like a dark cloud that covered the sky. With every step it took, it would trample over several ancient trees that soared into the sky. The great earth trembled violently, and countless cracks were torn open. Its eyes were comparable to the stars, the sun, and the moon. Each strand of its hair could break apart a mountain. Its calm breathing was like the roar of thunder. Although Qin Yu had made many preparations for the world beneath his feet, it was only now that he discovered that this world was far more terrifying than he had imagined. No, it was 100 times, 1,000 times, 10,000 times more terrifying. Luckily, this great beast didn't seem to discover Qin Yu, who was even smaller than an ant to it. The earth quaked and the mountains shook as it walked into the distance, finally vanishing from sight. Behind it, the ancient trees that had been trampled on began to crawl up from the ground. The damaged areas rapidly regenerated, not leaving behind a single mark. Soon, besides the countless fallen leaves on the ground, everything was restored to how it was in the beginning. Even the cracks in the ground disappeared. What a terrifying regenerative ability! But in the blink of an eye, Qin Yu understood. If it weren't for such an astonishing regenerative ability, then no matter how powerful this world was, it still wouldn't have been able to withstand the destruction caused by the vicious beasts living within.